Chapter 15:10. Buddha Immortal Shadow. The terrifying lightning dragon floated in the air. Its icy eyes suddenly stared at the South Heaven Gate. The latter's figure stiffened as a great chill ran down his spine. Whoosh! A boundless force whizzed through the air as a beast claw the size of a mountain slammed down furiously, shattering the spear into pieces. Crap! The South Heaven Gate was startled. He quickly backed away. Everyone knew that after the tribulation was born, anyone that dared to attack the person undergoing the tribulation would be treated as an enemy by the tribulation. Qin Nan's tribulation of the martial god realm has appeared. Many authorities were startled. They let out relieved sighs in their hearts. Even though they could no longer understand the battle between the mysterious future life and Empress Feiyue, they did know one thing. After the tribulation appeared, Qin Nan was no longer in any danger. Apart from the tribulation itself, it was almost impossible for anyone to kill Qin Nan. Buzz! At that instant, an unexpected change took place once again. On the dojo, Dragon Emperor, Longhu, Sima Kong, Tang Qingshan, and the Death Crystal seemed to have completed their transformation. The God Glow and Monarch Glow emitted from their bodies slashed into the sky like a godly sword. Wisps of the force of the heavens and earth surged toward them once again. The force of the heavens and earth that the latter four had attracted even surpassed that of Dragon Emperor. Are they going to achieve the martial god realm and claim their own martial monarchs too? The astonishment in the hearts of the cultivators was indescribable with words. When a person rose up in the boundless darkness, more and more flames would burn. This was the so-called New Era. Roar! The lightning dragon suddenly uttered a roar into the sky. Its aura completely surpassed that of Dragon Emperor and the others. Its scales that were like peerless treasures began to crack open. Is that? Even Empress Feiyue and her future life were startled. They could easily tell that the tribulation of the lightning dragon could only be triggered when a cultivator achieved the human god realm. Qin Nan had surpassed the four extremities and possessed the Tao pattern. It was normal for him to be able to reach this stage. But why did the lightning tribulation change now? Rumble! In just a single breath's time, the lightning dragon completely collapsed, causing the heavens and earth to tremble vigorously. A magnificent immortal glow flickered without any sign, driving away the darkness. Several magnificent figures in immortal armor appeared in the sky like blossoming flowers. The auras of the figures were mixed between humans, beasts, demons, and gods. Their cultivations were fluctuating between the martial god realm and the martial monarch realm. In the end, it was fixed at the martial king level, which was equal to Qin Nan. What kind of lightning tribulation is this? Despite that, the voices of the cultivators trembled as their eyes were filled with terror. From these strange figures they could feel an innate suppression. It was as if their 10th grade Huang-ranked martial spirits were facing a 10th grade Tian-ranked martial spirit. Mixed between humans, beasts, demons, and gods, could this be the Pagoda Immortal Shadow Tribulation? Empress Feiyue, her future life, and Heaven God Lu in the distance were astounded, especially the latter, who was utterly dumbfounded. Even though the Pagoda Immortal Shadow Tribulation was only a tenth of its true strength, it could only be triggered when one achieved the Heaven God realm from the Earth God realm. They had never seen a mere martial monarch triggering the tribulation when he achieved the martial God realm. Even someone who has mastered the Tao realm wouldn't be able to do it. Could it be that the kid's body is the primary flame? Doesn't that mean his past life? The next life's heart shuddered as her eyes flickered with astonishment. The tribulation of 3 lifetimes was more interesting than she had expected. She did not expect the person to have such a shocking identity. Kill. Over 10,000 figures locked onto Qin Nan and uttered roars. A strong murderous aura poured down furiously like a heavenly river that had lost its restraints. Destruction Battle Saber. Qin Nan soared into the sky with a tremendous battle intent. A crimson golden armor was vaguely visible on his body. The saber in his hand buzzed continuously, as if it was extremely excited. Meanwhile, under the crowd's gaze, even though Qin Nan's cultivation was only in the martial emperor realm, his aura was like that of a divine god of battle. Bang! 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 A great battle took place. One after another, the eerie figures were shattered into pieces by the saber. As each figure was destroyed, a godly glow was emitted from Qin Nan's body. The god power in his body seemed to have broken through layers of seals, transforming bit by bit and becoming stronger. I thought your tribulation was going to evolve, but it's only a bunch of martial emperors. There's no need to resort to that. I can shatter your tribulation so you won't be able to achieve the martial god realm. The god ranking collected its thoughts and uttered a hollow laugh. It unleashed its force of the martial highness realm and executed a series of killing blows aiming at the eerie figures. Shatter the tribulation first, then kill Qin Nan. Stop it. The future life of the copper mirror was startled. However, it was already too late. The eerie figures that were fighting against Qin Nan suddenly turned their heads with hideous grins. Their auras skyrocketed to the peak martial highness realm as they threw punches forward. The pagoda Immortal Shadows tribulation was similar to Qin Nan and the past life of the copper mirror. They would only maintain the same cultivation as the person undergoing the tribulation. If anyone were to attack them, their cultivation would be the same as the enemy's. It was the same even when facing a heaven god realm expert. The eyes of the god ranking widened. Before it could react, it was devoured by the punches. It let out a cry of agony as its figure vanished into thin air. You're still as stupid as before. If you're so easy to deal with, why would you be plotting for so long? The spirit of the monarch ranking did not conceal the disdain in its eyes. Over the years, even though it had teamed up with the god ranking, it still looked down on the god ranking deep in its heart. It had always wanted to devour the god ranking. However, before it could finish the words in its heart, it suddenly sensed something. Turning its head to look, it saw the remaining force rushing toward it without any deviation. Following another cry of agony, the will of the monarch ranking turned into thin air too. Idiot! The future life of the copper mirror shook her head and transmitted her voice to the South Heaven Gate. She suddenly frowned after she was done. A moment ago, her heart was filled with an uneasy feeling all of a sudden. Chapter 15:11. Becoming the master soon. For someone of her level, any uneasy feeling was a sign that something was about to happen. This implied that some of her next actions would cause a shocking change that would cause great harm to her. Interesting, such a sign came when I was about to deal with Qin Nan. The future life of the copper mirror wore a faint smile on her face. Her eyes flickered with a flicker. Her current interest had been completely aroused. Either way, no matter what she was going to do next, she was summoned by the tribulation of 3 lifetimes. It did not matter how serious the injuries she suffered were, it would not affect her actual self. Meanwhile, under the crowd's gaze, Qin Nan was like a dragon diving into the ocean. He slashed the figures into pieces without any hindrance. The godly glow on his body grew stronger too, like an ancient godly flower that was about to blossom. There are still more than 500 tribulation phantoms left. The cultivators subconsciously held their breath. Qin Nan, you must die here today. Heaven God Lu clenched his fist. Even though he knew the whole plan, he could not help but feel a little nervous too. Once Qin Nan achieved the martial god realm, he would no longer be able to hide his scheme. If he was slightly unlucky, the preparations he had made over the past few tens of thousands of years would all be in vain. Meow meow, keep an eye on the South Heaven Gate. Empress Feiyue transmitted her thought. More snowflakes drifted around her. She clearly knew that once someone surpassed the limits of their capabilities and was about to achieve the martial god realm, something unexpected would happen. Only around 80 tribulation phantoms left. At that instant it felt like time had slowed down. Every breath, every moment became incomparably long. Everyone could clearly feel the passage of time. Princess Meow Meow straightened her face. She secretly activated the sacred spirit flesh. If anything happened, even if she was severely injured, she would try her best to buy Qin Nan some time. South Heaven Gate, do it. Finally, the copper mirror made her move. Her hand performed a series of forbidden hand seals at a shocking pace. Countless runes of immortal light spread out from her body. Boom! The South Heaven Gate unleashed the force of the Martial Highness Realm 2. Don't even think about it. Empress Feiyue and Princess Meow Meow made their moves simultaneously. They executed shocking moves to attack the two cultivators. In addition to it, the army of immortals outside the Kanglan continent was using a forbidden move too. In my previous life, it was already too late. The formation had already been set up long ago. The future life of the bronze mirror smiled faintly. Behind the South Heaven Gate, a few 100,000 runes resembling ancient dragons flickered and spread across the rift, forming a terrifying formation. A formation set up by Heaven God Lu and the God List when they attacked Qin Nan? Then why didn't I notice anything? Empress Feiyue shuddered. Taboo of the first desolation, the ancient Tao is boundless, the laws of yin and yang, all living beings listen. The future life of the copper mirror wore a stern expression. Her voice echoed in the hearts of the crowd like the voice of the great Tao. Wushu Demon Calamity, using blood as the trigger, using origin as the sacrifice. The South Heaven Gate spat out a drop of blood and executed the ancient forbidden art that its future life had taught it. It began to sacrifice its origin force. Its aura rose once again as wisps of blue light gathered in front of it. Qin Nan, I'll destroy your tribulation now. The South Heaven Gate let out a roar. A terrifying attack was executed, firing at the remaining shadows of the tribulation. The shadows of the tribulation collected their thoughts. Their auras skyrocketed as they made their move. However, in front of this killer move, they actually seemed rather small and insignificant. Sacred Spirit Immortal Flesh. An ancient illusionary figure appeared behind Princess Meow Meow once again. With a grabbing motion, it grabbed streams of energy from the objects below and inserted them into the princess body. Princess Meow Meow's aura improved too. Even though it was unable to resist the attack, it could prevent the shadows of the tribulation from being destroyed. Bang! The cultivators could see Princess Meow Meow's figure being knocked backward. Drops of blood leaked out from her mouth, while her aura weakened significantly. The shadows of the tribulation continued to be destroyed. However, there were only 10 shadows left. She managed to stop the South Heaven Gate and the others. Everyone was astounded. The faces of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the others were filled with joy. Princess Qin Nan was startled. Don't worry about me, break the tribulation and achieve the martial god realm. Princess Meow Meow stabilized herself and yelled. Destruction Battle Saber. Qin Nan was startled. He clenched his teeth and unleashed all his might. He unleashed the strongest saber glow that loomed at the remaining shadows of the tribulation. Phew, it hurts so much. Once you achieve the martial god realm, if you don't get me some good wine, I won't forgive you. Princess Meow Meow let out a relieved sigh. Her eyes stared at Qin Nan's back. She did not do anything when Qin Nan achieved the martial monarch realm on his own. Now that he was achieving the martial god realm, she finally helped Qin Nan resolve the danger. Meow Meow, their trap, however, Empress Feiyue seemed to have noticed something. Her face, which was like a piece of ancient ice, shifted slightly for the first time. Art of Tao Reversal, Heaven-Defying Trap. The copper mirror's future life completed the last forbidden seal. At that instant, an astounding sight took place. All of a sudden, a spell formation appeared beneath the feet of all the cultivators present, as well as those on the second continent. An invisible force wrapped around all of them. The cultivators who were not involved in the battle were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was going on. Force of all living beings, strengthen me! The south heaven gate uttered a furious roar. Bang! 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 Countless formations began to operate at the same time. Every cultivator's energy was drawn away by an invisible force. The energy turned into a ray of light and entered the formation under the south heaven gate's feet. In addition to that, the formation continued to operate. Before the cultivators could react, they were teleported out of the second continent and returned to the Kanglan continent. Only a few cultivators were left on the second continent. After their energy was drawn away, they were weaker than ordinary people. They could no longer stay on the second continent. As for the South Heaven Gate, its aura was like an ancient giant ping spreading its wings. It broke free from the chains and soared into the sky. Within the blink of an eye, it unleashed a magnificent monarch aura. Is that? Empress Feiyue's eyes widened. At this moment, she completely understood. The future life had refined the monarch fruits and god seeds to attract the cultivators here. She was planning to use a forbidden technique to absorb the energy of all living beings. She had suppressed her cultivation to the level of an ordinary person, not to prevent herself from being injured, but to absorb the energy smoothly. After all, if the cultivators were not an ordinary person, they would be able to resist it. However, how did the future life manage to use such a forbidden technique? Feiyue, I'm afraid you have no idea, but I'm about to become the master. The future life wore a calm smile. The last few words were like the thunder of an ancient god. Martial monarch? Qin Nan and Princess Miao Miao were startled. Chapter 15:12 Song of Sorrows. Meanwhile, in the half-god region of the Kanglan continent, countless figures appeared in the air one after another. Their auras suddenly skyrocketed. Some had reached the martial highness realm, some had reached the martial monarch realm, and some had even reached the martial god realm. Apart from Heaven God Lu and the martial serendipity pavilion, everyone else was teleported out. What happened just now? Everyone steadied themselves, but their expressions were still stunned. This was especially true for the cultivators around the battlefield. They were filled with questions. What technique did the Southern Heaven Gate use just now? How had they been forcibly teleported out of the second continent? Has Qin Nan succeeded in becoming a god? All of a sudden, the cultivators came to their senses and looked at the vast continent floating in the sky. In comparison, whether or not Qin Nan had ascended to godhood was the most important thing. They all remembered that Princess Miao Miao had helped Qin Nan resolve the danger, and there were only 10 tribulation shadows left. Now, would Qin Nan be eliminated by the Southern Heavenly Gate's final trump card, or would he successfully become a god? Qin Nan, you must die there. The master of the god-beast Forbidden Ground and the rest of the patriarch-level existences clenched their fists and cursed in their hearts. Meanwhile, on the battlefield of the second continent, how can he have the cultivation of a great emperor? The Dragon Emperor, Tang Qinshan, the martial serendipity pavilion, and the rest of the authorities were astounded, causing their faces to turn pale. Once the Southern Heaven Gate possessed the cultivation of a martial monarch, who could possibly stop it? Qin Nan, you didn't expect this, did you? Even though it can only last for 30 breaths, a martial monarch realm cultivator can still use some trick. You will die in my hands today. The Southern Heaven's Gate was filled with murderous intent. It grabbed with its giant hand, and thousands of martial intents appeared. They formed into a peerless demonic figure that charged toward Qin Nan. The remaining 10 tribulation shadows roared into the sky. Their auras skyrocketed, and they too emitted emperor light as they charged toward the demonic shadow. Lin Hua Jade Immortal True Pagoda. Empress Feiyue collected her thoughts in the nick of time. She performed a hand seal, summoning a giant pagoda over 100 zhang tall from the hole in the second continent. It came down upon Qin Nan in an instant. The 10 tribulation shadows were no match against the South Heaven Gate. They would be destroyed instantly if they tried to clash with the South Heaven Gate. She had to stop it and let Qin Nan deal with the last lightning tribulation. Empress Feiyue, 9 years ago, I only mastered 3 immortal intents, but I've now mastered 6 immortal intents. This move of yours has no effect on us. You can't stop me at all. The South Heaven Gate unleashed a tremendous aura. 6 immortal glows were emitted from its body, which transformed into a pitch-black giant hand grabbing at the sky. Rumble! Countless rifts collapsed and shattered. An incomparably terrifying storm of energy swept out in all directions. The South Heaven Gate remained still like a magnificent mountain. Qin Nan, this is what you get for going against me. Die. The South Heaven Gate's thunderous roar echoed in all directions. It took a step forward and executed a peerless god art to dodge the 10 tribulation shadows and arrived on the other side of Qin Nan. Whoosh! Blue flames burst out of its eyes. Wisps of cultivation intent and the 6 immortal intents gathered on its arm. In the end, the immortal intents turned into a punch and threw it forward. It did not continue to deal with the tribulation. It was planning to kill Qin Nan to put an end to everything. It's over. The souls of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion, the master of the Tao Origin Heavenly Mountain, and the others trembled. They wanted to stop it, yet they did not have the strength to do so. They could not even fly to Qin Nan's side and block the attack for him. Supreme True Art. Empress Feiyue wore an icy expression. She kept performing hand seals. South Heaven Gate. Qin Nan felt a great chill running down his spine. He was in a great danger, yet his will did not give up. It grew stronger instead. Even if he was going to die, he would fight until the very last moment and use all his strength. South Heaven Gate, even you won't be able to stop the person under my protection from achieving the martial god realm. In the nick of time, Princess Miao Miao stepped forward and stood in front of Qin Nan. Countless illusionary flames were burning on her body. Her aura continued to rise and soar. She had sacrificed the origin force of her life force. The flesh turns into 10,000 spirits, unparalleled soul. The sacred glow encapsulating Princess Miao Miao's figure grew incredibly brilliant, as if she had truly become the sacred of 10,000 spirits with the power of 10,000 spirits. She shoved her hand forward. Following a loud explosion, the 2 killing moves vanished into thin air. Princess Miao Miao's figure felt like it had just been struck by a godly hammer. Her life force was only left with a weak trace. It was on the verge of dissipating at any second. Princess. Qin Nan was startled. A mere ant might be able to resist one of my attacks, but do you think you can resist the second one? The South Heaven Gate let out a hollow laugh. Countless martial intents surged forward once again, which combined into a blue ancient spear that fired at the South Heaven Gate. The spear was as quick as lightning, so quick that everyone could only see a flicker. Qin Nan, watch out! At that instant, the dying Princess Miao Miao suddenly unleashed a powerful force that pushed Qin Nan a few li away. However, she had no chance of dodging after Qin Nan was pushed away. No. Qin Nan's eyes instantly widened. However, he did not have the strength to stop the spear. Bang! It was as if time had slowed down. At that instant, everyone could clearly see Princess Miao Miao's chest being penetrated by the spear. Countless drops of blood-emitting sacred glows scattered across the sky. Petals of various colors appeared, swaying and blossoming one after another. Xiao Nan. Xiao Nanzi. Princess Miao Miao's face turned pale as she stared at Qin Nan in the distance. She forced a smile as she became aware of something. I'll be leaving first. You must seal. Before she could say the final word, as well as many other things in her heart, the last bit of weak life force in her body was completely extinguished. The sacred glow on her figure gradually faded away. It gradually turned cold and fell into a dead silence. Princess Miao Miao, is dead? The Dragon Emperor, Tang Qingshan, the Martial Serendipity Pavilion, and the others were stunned. Even Empress Feiyue's icy blue eyes shuddered. Princess? Chapter 1513. Boiling with anger at this moment, he seemed to have lost his soul. Like a puppet, he staggered towards Princess Miao Miao and hugged her tightly. Princess! 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 His eyes lost focus. He wanted to wake her up, but it was as if he was possessed. He kept repeating the same thing over and over again, completely ignoring the cold and deathly stillness. As of this moment, the entire second continent was completely silent. Between heaven and earth, there were streaks of sorrow spreading. You're as foolish as magical hair back then. You've lost your soul for a mere ant. The southern heaven's gate looked down at Qin Nan with a hint of mockery in its eyes. I don't mind telling you that after I kill you, I'll destroy the entire Lost Herb Garden. An ant-like existence dared to obstruct it time and time again. This had already aroused its killing intent. Southern Heaven Gate, stop wasting time. Kill Qin Nan quickly. The future life of the Copper Mirror and Heaven God Lu yelled. They completely ignored the Princess Miao Miao's death. Qin Nan, prepare to die. The South Heaven Gate collected its thoughts. Countless blue glows and wills burst out from its body, forming a terrifying spear that fired at Qin Nan. Qin Nan, the young man of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion, the master of the Tao Origin Heavenly Mountain, and the others were startled. However, right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A tremendous force burst out from Qin Nan's body out of nowhere. Bang! Following a loud explosion, the terrifying spear that was strong enough to crush a peak martial monarch was unable to move any further, as if it had fallen into a chaotic swamp. What happened? At this moment, everyone was stunned. Even with the knowledge of the future life of the Copper Mirror, she had no idea why Qin Nan would suddenly unleash such a powerful force. Only Empress Feiyue frowned slightly. Could it be that the fifth immortal has made his move? However, if it was him, why didn't he make a move earlier? Qin Nan, I didn't expect you to have such a powerful force in your body. However, you're still going to die today. South Heaven Immortal Sword, kill! The South Heaven Gate collected its thoughts and uttered a roar. Its 6 immortal intents appeared and merged with other forces, turning into an illusionary sword over 100 zhang long. It shattered the rift and slashed forward. The slash was its strongest move. It was more than enough to kill a first-layer martial god. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded out. Rainbow-like sword intent swept out in all directions. In the next instant, everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. This was because when the tip of the sword was less than an inch away from Qin Nan, it was unable to move. Southern Heaven Gate. At that instant, Qin Nan, who seemed to be possessed, seemed to have accepted the truth. He stopped chanting. His body began to tremble as his eyes turned bloodshot. His entire body was covered in a scarlet-red color, as if he had been attacked by blood. Following it, a formidable murderous aura burst out from his body and surged across the place. Even the heavens and earth began to tremble. This, Empress Feiyue and her future life were startled. You are all going to die. Qin Nan let out a furious roar. His blood hair drifted wildly despite the absence of wind. A terrifying force burst out from his body as if a seal had been broken. Bang! 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 At that instant, it felt like the entire second continent was struck by countless thunderbolts. The boundless sky and land were dyed the color of blood. A terrifying murderous intent filled every inch of the place, as if it had turned into a boundless hell. The death of Princess Miao Miao had triggered Qin Nan's unprecedented anger. He was utterly enraged. What kind of power is that? The eyes of the South Heaven Gate, Heaven God Lu, the Martial Serendipity Pavilion, the master of the Tao Origin Heavenly Mountain, and the others were filled with astonishment. Even the future life of the Copper Mirror and Empress Feiyue shared the same reaction. Qin Nan was no different than a peerless demon immortal in their eyes. Most importantly, why was the rules of cultivation of the second continent not restricting Qin Nan's movements? Kill! Following a furious roar, the rules of cultivation and the rules of cultivation within a few million li turned into chaos and ceased to exist. Qin Nan took a step forward. The heaven-shattering saber in his hand slashed at the South Heaven Gate. The power of the slash was simply too terrifying. It was so terrifying that even the South Heaven Gate did not dare to attack. He could only watch as the slash landed on his body. A cry of agony tore through the clouds. Not only did the slash shatter its body into pieces, it also prevented it from dissipating immediately. It was encapsulated by a great pain, making it feel like dying. Following it, another blood-red glow traveled across the rift and slashed at Heaven God Lu's head. A second cry of agony took place. Heaven God Lu was covered in blood. There was no sign of life in his body, yet he was still alive. He was consumed by the pain as he watched his body being slashed in half. He's gone mad. He's awakening the dormant power in his body. After all, the future life of the Copper Mirror was someone who was about to achieve mastery. She quickly collected her thoughts and executed a powerful art. Her figure vanished into thin air as she flew toward the giant gap in the sky. Once she returned to the Kanglan continent, her cultivation would recover to a whole new level. If she was still no match against Qin Nan, she would simply unleash her cultivation and shatter the entire Kanglan continent, killing everyone. She would have completed the tribulation of 3 lifetimes. However, in the next moment, her figure suddenly froze. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw an endless amount of blood-red light land behind her. A pair of demonic eyes stared at her unwaveringly. No wonder I'm feeling uneasy. I didn't expect the power in your body to reach such a level. The future life of the Copper Mirror calmed her thoughts and said with a calm smile. Bang! A blood-red fist landed on her chest with a destructive force, leaving a huge hole in her body. Gasp! Even the future life of the Copper Mirror could not help but gasp when she was struck by the great pain. However, she soon forced a smile. It's meaningless for you to kill me. It won't affect my real body at all. Once my real body awakens, I'll investigate it and find out who you are. She had never been so interested in Qin Nan before. Chapter 15-14. The color of the heavens and earth changed. Roar. A tremendous roar took place between the heavens and earth, as an indescribable magnificent figure rose from the ground and reached out its giant hand to grab at the great Tao. Time and space froze all of a sudden. In addition to the second continent, even the half-god region in the Kanglan continent froze. The flowing river, the surging clouds, every cultivator, every living being, regardless of whether they were fighting, moving forward, or conversing, all of them came to an abrupt halt. It was as if they had been immobilized by the art of immobilization. Whoosh! Wisps of flames of the great Tao suddenly burst into flames in front of the future life of the Copper Mirror. They soon turned into a magnificent fiery door. Inside the flaming gate, there was a large amount of black water surging. One of the water droplets emitted a mystical glow as it displayed an image. In the image was a vast and majestic immortal palace. Deep inside the palace was a blood-red altar over 10,000 zhang tall. The altar was covered in countless ancient immortal formations emitting wisps of the force of 3 lifetimes. A beautiful woman without any clothes was lying on the ground. Her eyes were closed, and one could even see her long eyelashes. How did you? The future life of the Copper Mirror was the only one who was not frozen. Her eyes flickered with great astonishment as her heart was filled with great astonishment. The person in the image was none other than her actual self. What kind of terrifying power did this Qin Nan possess to be able to lock onto her true self despite the great distance between them? Even someone who achieved the Master Realm would not be able to do it. Kill. The indescribable magnificent figure immediately merged with Qin Nan's body. The saber glow that Qin Nan slashed forward possessed an aura similar to that of time and space. Why is the aura so similar to the force of 3 lifetimes? The eyes of the future life of the copper mirror flickered with astonishment once again. However, before she could finish, the saber glow shattered her into pieces. In addition to it, the glamorous woman in the image shuddered. The ancient immortal formations on the altars shattered into pieces. Whoosh! At the same time, the fiery door dissipated. Qin Nan's aura returned to its original state. The second continent and the half-god region of the Kanglan continent returned to normal too. Every cultivator and living being was unaware of what had happened. Did he kill them all? The Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the others were dumbfounded upon seeing this. They never thought Qin Nan would be so terrifying after he turned into a demon. What happened? Only Empress Feiyue frowned. She could sense that something had happened the moment the future life of the copper mirror had died. Yet they were unaware of it. Roar! Meanwhile, the remaining shadows of the tribulation that were not destroyed by the South Heaven Gate roared at Qin Nan as their auras skyrocketed. However, their cries came to an abrupt stop as they were crushed into pieces by a terrifying giant hand. The tribulation dissipated. The god horoscopes in Qin Nan's body began to vibrate vigorously, as if they were going to evolve. However, the aura was like a drop in the ocean compared to Qin Nan's aura. It was so minuscule that it was almost impossible to notice it. Kill! Qin Nan's eyes glanced downward, as if they were able to see through the vast land and into the deepest part of the second continent. Bang! 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 A boundless blood-red saber glow tore the rules apart and slashed at the ground. The deaths of the South Heaven Gate and the others were not enough to calm its anger. It was going to destroy everything here. He's going to destroy the second continent. We should leave at once. Empress Feiyue wore a stern look. She quickly performed a series of hand seals, causing illusionary petals to blossom on the figures of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the others. However, before they could leave, they felt a great chill running down their spines. Among the countless saber glows, one of them happened to be slashing at the spacious battlefield. They had no chance of escaping from the terrifying saber glow. They were all going to be crushed into pieces. Whoosh! In the nick of time, a pitch-black crystal flew toward them from the dojo and floated in the air. Deep inside the crystal, the blurry figure of a woman with short white hair could be seen. She stared into the sky with her lips slightly open, as if she was saying something. The terrifying saber glow that was about to slash at them came to a stop. Qin Nan, who was like a peerless demon, came to a stop for the first time too. His bloodshot eyes stared at the crystal while emitting a bloody glow. The saber glow of the heaven-shattering saber in his hand grew stronger and calmer at times. "Wake up!" At that instant, a thunderous voice echoed in the second continent. An ancient drawing made of beast hide appeared and fired an ocean of talismans at Qin Nan. Kill! A strong murderous aura swept across the place once again. Boundless crimson glows were unleashed continuously. The force inside Qin Nan's body became restless once again. The magnificent illusionary figure slowly appeared once again. Crap! At this rate, the ancient taboo of the 9 heavens is going to be alerted. I must think of a way to calm him down first. The beast hide drawing said sternly. If the ancient taboo was aware of the aura inside Qin Nan's body, everything would be destroyed. I can only try. The beast hide drawing suddenly discovered something. While resisting the saber glows, it emitted a blinding blue glow that landed on Princess Meow Meow. Wisps of sacred light burst out from Princess Meow Meow's body. Wisps of illusionary force surged like a strong gust of wind and slowly turned into a glamorous figure. Normally, a cultivator's soul would not dissipate immediately after they died. The beast-hide drawing had used a peerless method to gather the power of her soul that was dissipating, allowing her to reappear, even though it would only last for a few breaths. Qin Nan. A clear and melodious voice rang out across the endless hell-like continent. The aura that Qin Nan was emitting and the crimson saber glows that he was unleashing came to a stop as if they were struck by lightning. The crimson color between the heavens and earth began to fade. The murderous aura that made one tremble in fear was gradually extinguished. The crimson glow on his body gradually dimmed. He turned his head around with great difficulty. It wasn't until he saw that familiar figure that his scarlet eyes became a little more focused. His voice trembled. Chapter 15:15. Editor. Nioibo light spots all over the sky. Meanwhile, in a mysterious place in the nine heavens immortal realm, in the high heavens realm, the boundless darkness turned into waves that surged in all directions. If anyone was around, they would see skeletons emitting tremendous immortal glows in the middle of the tide. Suddenly, the black waves froze. A pair of huge eyes filled with countless figures slowly opened in the depths of the darkness. Shwa. His eyes emitted a terrifying immortal glow as if he could see through the boundless Tao, peering into the depths of the heavenly secrets. Just now, what was that aura? A dignified voice exploded in this place. Some time ago, a strange Tao pattern was born. Now, such an aura has appeared. It seems that those people have reappeared in this world. The dignified voice suddenly turned cold. Investigate. These three words reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The hollow eyes of the immortal corpses in the black tide suddenly flickered with pitch-black immortal flames. Meanwhile, in the half-god region of the Kanglan continent in the secondary lower realm, what happened to the second continent? Why did it become scarlet just now? Such a terrifying murderous intent, even my monarch talisman was shattered. The faces of the cultivators were pale, and some of the weaker cultivators were covered in blood, suffering serious injuries. Of course, the more that was the case, the more curious they were about what was happening on the second continent. Look, there's a ray of divine light blooming inside. Suddenly, a martial monarch of the Anti-Heaven Alliance blurted out after seeing something. Divine light blooming? Everyone was startled as they raised their heads toward the direction of the voice. Meanwhile, on the second continent, everything within a radius of a few million miles had turned into a mess. Both the huge mountains and the forests had been swallowed by the saber intent and ceased to exist. Only the cold killing intent that had yet to dissipate remained. Empress Feiyue was standing on an ancient tree that had survived. Her cold eyes were staring at the beast-hide drawing in the air. What is this picture scroll? The aura that appeared in Qin Nan's body didn't belong to the fifth immortal. Does this mean that Qin Nan is the successor of the two immortals? Thinking of this, she shook her head. There was a voice in her heart telling her that everything was not as simple as it seemed. She suddenly sensed something and looked at Qin Nan. Qin Nan, who was standing in front of Princess Miao Miao, had lost most of his blood, but his hair and hands were still scarlet. On top of that, a magnificent glow burst out from Qin Nan's body and soared into the sky. His aura skyrocketed with a loud boom. 8th level martial god. 9th level martial god realm. 10th level martial god. At this point, it still didn't stop and continued to climb. Qin Nan, congratulations on achieving the martial god realm. From today onward, you are the strongest martial god of the Kanglan continent. Princess Miao Miao was slightly proud. This princess has good taste. Let's see what those old men can say now. The old men were martial god Tang Mu and the others from the Lost Herb Garden. She had argued with the old men many times for Qin Nan's sake. She even fought against 10 of them at once. Whoosh! The crimson-golden battle armor appeared on Qin Nan's body on its own. It seemed to have evolved too. Each rune on it was glowing brightly with an imperious aura. Together with Qin Nan's current cultivation and his blood-red hair, Qin Nan looked like a real god of battle. He was unbeatable. However, it felt like a certain part of his heart had suddenly become empty. It was filled with indescribable pain. The martial serendipity pavilion and the others fell silent. They did not feel any joy upon seeing this. "All right, Qin Nan, stop it. Everyone will die one day. I'm just going to die first." Princess Miao Miao's voice gradually weakened as she spoke. She looked at Qin Nan with tears in her eyes. Some things were very simple and easy to understand, but how could she be willing to give up? She had yet to taste the best wine in the world with Qin Nan. She had yet to rob the factions with Qin Nan. She had yet to be with Qin Nan. Too many things. After the desolated battleground, she once asked a senior sister about it. She later learned that sleeping together was not enough. They had to bow to the heavens and earth, their parents, and sign the heart-connecting talisman. Even though her parents were long gone, Uncle Qin Tian was still around. Besides, her senior sister also mentioned that they could have children after becoming partners. If she and Qin Nan had children, they would surely be the top genius of the Kanglan continent. Even Empress Feiyue was no match for him. Qin Nan. Princess Miao Miao withdrew her thoughts. Her figure floated in the air as her pleasant voice echoed between the heavens and earth. "Promise me, you will ascend to the 9 heavens and become an expert that everyone is impressed by. If you stumble into some good immortal wine, you must try it. It's going to taste good. I'll always be by your side." She wore a smile on her face. It was like 100 flowers blooming, causing the surroundings to become brighter and more enchanting. "I've always liked you the most." Qin Nan's heart shuddered. He reached out his hand to hug her. Her figure completely dissipated, turning into light dots in the sky. Scenes from the past surfaced in his mind. When she first showed up at the Xianling clan, she had a noble aura and looked at him disdainfully with her faint golden eyes. "You're acting like an idiot even though you're my servant. I'm so disappointed." However, at the Longhu mountain range, when he was being devoured by the left eye, her coldness melted and gave him her life force without hesitation. At the desolated battleground, she came from afar and got him drunk. He had no idea what she was doing behind his back. When he was trying to achieve the martial monarch realm, she stood in front of him without any hesitation when he was being attacked by countless people. She was a mischievous girl who liked to drink good wine. She also liked to refer to herself as a princess. She might be imperious and cruel on the surface, but she would always protect him at all costs. Meanwhile, Qin Nan's aura had reached an unbelievable level. It was emitting a magnificent glow and a terrifying aura. Every martial god realm expert, or even human god realm authorities, was overshadowed by him. However, he was completely unaware of it. His face was covered in tears as he stared at the light dots in the sky. A man would not cry easily, not to mention that he was the owner of the divine battle spirit, the strongest martial god of the Kanglan continent. "Princess, I've always liked you too." Chapter 15-16. The hand of fate. The surroundings fell into a dead silence. Qin Nan's eyes gradually dimmed. There was no sign of life in them. His figure stood still on the spot like a lifeless statue. He no longer had any thoughts in his mind, only endless sorrow. The martial serendipity pavilion and the others let out sighs in their hearts. The former, in particular, had watched Qin Nan's rise step by step. He was well aware of the relationship between Qin Nan and Princess Miao Miao. However, he did not expect fate to toy with him like this. Qin. The Dragon Emperor, Tang Qingshan, Sima Kong, and the others opened their mouths. They were trying to say something, yet no words came out from their mouths. It was unlikely that any consolation would work on him. Qin Nan, you've only destroyed the will of the South Heaven Gate and the others. You have yet to shatter them completely. Someone is still waiting for you, have you forgotten? All of a sudden, the beast hide drawing yelled. However, Qin Nan remained unmoved as if he could not hear anything. I know you're feeling sad, but she's only dead. She hasn't completely disappeared from the 6 paths of reincarnation. Why are you so depressed? The beast hide drawing spoke again. Can you save her? Qin Nan was startled for the first time. His dull eyes flickered as his face was filled with hope. I never thought that there would be a day when you would look at me with such a gaze. The beast hide drawing exclaimed before saying calmly, her soul has dissipated. She has lost all signs of life. I can't save her. The current Princess Miao Miao was different from Qiuhong. Qiuhong's flesh was occupied by Qin Nan. As the Dao rune was formed, and it was Qin Nan's Dao rune, a new sign of life appeared in his body. Qin Nan immediately fell silent, as if everything in this world had nothing to do with him. I haven't finished speaking yet. Although I am unable to save her, if it is you, there is a very high possibility that you will be able to reshape her soul, the beast skin painting said. The martial Serendipity Pavilion, the others, and even Empress Feiyue were startled. Even the peerless ruler of the 9 heavens' immortal realm was unable to reforge his soul. Even cultivators more powerful than her were unable to do so. Now, Qin Nan, the first god of all time, could do it? You don't have to lie to me. Qin Nan's voice was cold. I've lied to everyone in the world before, but I've never lied to you. You were completely demonized just now and lost your mind. There are some things that you still don't know. The voice of the beast hide drawing echoed in Qin Nan's mind. A brilliant glow burst out of the drawing and entered Qin Nan's body. Following it, when Princess Miao Miao was killed by the South Heaven Gate, Qin Nan was demonized and went on a killing spree, causing the 2nd continent to tremble greatly. This, Qin Nan was startled. He could not believe it. Was that him? How did he possess such a terrifying power in his body? There's no doubt about it, this power is the real power in your body. It's just that your cultivation isn't high enough, thus you couldn't notice it. A young man appeared in the beast hide drawing. He stared at Qin Nan and said, "Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary?" He added before Qin Nan could respond, "When you achieved the martial monarch realm on your own, Jiang Bailan almost died because of you. Now that you've achieved the martial god realm, Princess Miao Miao is dead because of you. Do you think it's all just a coincidence?" The words served as a great explosion, causing Qin Nan's heart to shudder violently, as his eyes were filled with a hint of redness. Could it be that someone is behind all this? The god force in Qin Nan's body surged as wisps of murderous intent burst out from it. No one is behind all this. No one in this world is capable of doing that, the young man said while emitting an immortal glow. The cultivation of a cultivator is basically defying the heavens. Apart from the tribulation of the heavens and earth, there are other kinds of tribulations that are constantly hindering a cultivator's cultivation. Especially when a cultivator that defies the heavens and earth is born, it's as if a hand of fate is controlling everything, causing the cultivator to lose a lot of things. As the saying went, it was difficult to have the best of both worlds. Once a cultivator obtained great power, they would lose everything else. If everything else was perfect, they would not be able to obtain great power. What does it have to do with me reconstructing the princess soul? Qin Nan asked coldly as the murderous aura in his body withdrew. He could not care less about it. Of course it does. As the saying goes, the martial monarch realm, the martial god realm, the immortal ascension, the Tao-seeking realm, and the master realm. As long as you successfully ascend as an immortal in the 9 heavens, you will awaken the true power in your body. It was as if 2 invisible flames were burning in the young man's eyes. When that time comes, the unseen rules of cultivation will no longer affect you. You will have a great chance to reconstruct the princess soul. Qin Nan's heart shuddered when he heard the words. He knew that the ranks above the martial god realm were human god, earth god, heaven god, human immortal, earth immortal, and heaven immortal. He was not too sure about the Tao-seeking realm and the master realm, but he believed that the immortal ascension referred to the heaven god realm and the human immortal realm. You said there's a great chance. Does that mean it's not absolute? Qin Nan took a deep breath and asked. Of course, nothing is absolute in this world. There's a great chance, but isn't it better than having no hope at all? A calm smile appeared on the young man's face. Qin Nan, you have to remember one thing. Man can conquer the heavens, and anything is possible. As long as you are strong enough, you can shatter the 9 heavens immortal realm, overturn the 6 paths of reincarnation, alter the rules of life and death, etc. Even if it's just a fantasy story, you can still do it. Hearing this, Qin Nan's heart was filled with a strange feeling, as his eyes flickered with excitement. Even though he had no idea what kind of power he had, it was highly possible after he ascended as an immortal. As the painting mentioned, man can conquer the heavens, and anything is possible. If he still failed to ascend as an immortal, he could still achieve the master realm, or acquire greater power. It was only a matter of time until he could reconstruct the princess soul. Princess, Qin Nan stared at the body that had lost all signs of life. His heart ached and he felt like he was suffocating. Chapter 15-17. The voice echoed across the continent. According to the beast-hide drawing, the death of the princess was closely related to him. He had become the strongest martial god of all times, one who possessed the Tao rune and the mysterious flame. It went without saying that the hand of fate was trying to take away his love. No matter what, I will save you and become your Taoist companion. Qin Nan swore in his heart. On top of that, we'll have to refine Princess Miao Miao's body and turn it into her unique aura to merge with the crystal. The young man's voice echoed in everyone's ears. Once the aura of life and death is combined, we'll be able to reforge the soul fragment when the time comes. However, the crystal won't be able to transform anymore. Qin Nan was startled. He subconsciously glanced at the death crystal. The figure of a woman with short white hair appeared deep inside the crystal. Her attractive face wore a smile as she said, "As long as we can reforge the soul of the princess, it doesn't matter if I don't transform for the time being." When she transformed into the death crystal, it was Princess Miao Miao who had given her the origin force of life. Even though the two of them were in love with the same person, thus they were still enemies in some way, she would never forget their friendship. Flame of Tao. The young man in the beast hide drawing flicked his finger. A strange flame encapsulated Princess Miao Miao's figure. In the end, a sacred aura with a white glow floated out from the crystal. It seemed to be quite fond of Qin Nan. It circled around Qin Nan before flying into the death crystal. The aura of the crystal changed instantly. It now contained a hint of life within the death crystal. The mysterious young man in the beast hide drawing glanced at Qin Nan. His lips curled upward before he disappeared. The seed had been planted. Now they just had to wait patiently. Qin Nan, what's going on? Princess Miao Miao. The martial serendipity pavilion and the others blurted out. The princess is not dead. Sooner or later, I will reconstruct her soul. Before they could finish speaking, Qin Nan said softly. Although there was hope now, his heart was still filled with pain and reluctance. After a long time, he took a deep breath and suppressed all his thoughts. Seniors, thank you for your help this time, allowing me to successfully ascend to godhood. He rose from the ground and bowed deeply toward the martial serendipity pavilion and the others. He knew that even though Heaven God Lu, the South Heaven Gate, and the others had come to the second continent in their true forms, the martial serendipity pavilion and the others had come in their true selves. If he died, he would be completely dead. This friendship was as heavy as a mountain. Chin Nan, please don't say such things. We're only helping you with trivial matters, but you, the martial serendipity pavilion, the master of the Tao origin heavenly mountain, and the others hesitated. Seniors, don't worry, I'm fine now. Seniors, please gather everyone in the Anti-Heaven Alliance. A terrifying aura burst out of Chin Nan's body and broke through the restraints of the second continent. Dazzling and resplendent divine light rushed into the clouds, dyeing the vast sky a brilliant color. His eyes turned cold with a strong murderous intent. When he was achieving the martial monarch realm, the South Heaven Gate had killed Jiang Bailan. When he achieved the martial monarch realm on his own, the South Heaven Gate and the others had teamed up to hunt him down. Now, when he was trying to achieve the martial god realm, they even killed his princess. Now that he had proven himself as the #1 god of all time, it was time for them to pay back the debt of blood 10,000 times over. Got it? The martial serendipity pavilion and the others nodded. A few hours later, in the half-god region of the Kanglan continent, everyone's attention was still fixed on the second continent. Even though they had seen the godly glow, they still wanted to know if Chin Nan had achieved the martial god realm. As for Heaven God Lu, the South Heaven Gate, and the 3 authorities of the god ranking, they were already aware of the situation. They began to plan secretly under the pressure. Hey kid, stop stomping your foot. How many times have I told you, there's no way Chin Nan will achieve the martial god realm? In an ordinary city, in a noisy tavern, a bearded man said without any trace of politeness. Haha, that's right. The others burst out laughing. Enough with the nonsense. Alliance leader Chin Nan is the first person in the world to achieve the martial monarch realm on his own. Others might not succeed, but he will. A young man around the age of 15 blushed. He showed no sign of backing off despite being mocked by the crowd. Lin Xinghao, if you're not convinced, why don't we have a bet now? I'll bet 500 monarch crystals that if Chin Nan achieves the martial god realm, I'll give them all to you. If not. The bearded man chuckled confidently. Right at that moment, a voice suddenly echoed above the ancient city without any warning. Fellow cultivators, I'm Chin Nan. These short words caused the bearded man, all the cultivators in the tavern, and all the cultivators in the city to stare in shock. In addition to that, apart from the city, Chin Nan's voice echoed above every city in the half-god region, the middle continent, and the other 4 continents. It was the trick that the Heavenly Fortune tribe had secretly set up. Is that really Chin Nan? Countless cultivators were astounded. They raised their heads and glanced into the sky. The sky-scorching emperor, the cultivators of the eastern continent, the disciples of various factions, and the ancient existences reacted the same way. The South Heaven Gate has suppressed the Kanglan seal of the Kanglan continent, preventing all cultivators from ascending. It has also altered the rules of cultivation with the god ranking. Therefore, every cultivator in the Kanglan continent must rely on their martial spirits to cultivate. They must also inherit the monarch horoscopes and refine the god horoscopes to achieve the martial monarch realm and the martial god realm. The words left the cultivators in great astonishment. Their view of the world was greatly impacted. Heaven God Lu, the South Heaven Gate, and the others were startled. They did not expect Chin Nan to come up with such a plan. They treat the martial path as a chessboard and treat everyone as their chess pieces. They can manipulate and compete with one another at will. And now I've become the strongest martial god of all times. Fellow cultivators, if you're not willing to be a puppet without a soul, you can follow the Anti-Heaven Alliance to shatter the South Heaven Gate in 3 days, and break free from all restraints. Start The Real Kanglan Era. Chapter 1518. Editor. Nioi Bo domineering Bell. His voice seemed to contain an invisible force that echoed in the hearts of countless cultivators for a long time. The entire Kanglan continent fell into a dead silence after hearing the few sentences. After an unknown amount of time, the cultivators finally regained their senses. Their faces were filled with unprecedented astonishment. No one has ever been able to do this before. Both becoming the strongest martial god of all times and attacking the South Heaven Gate in 3 days had never happened in the history of the Kanglan continent. In particular, since the Heaven Resentment martial god had attacked the South Heaven Gate, many ancient experts had attacked it too. However, they were only planning in secret and launching a sudden attack. They weren't like Qin Nan, who announced a specific time and announced it to the world. How domineering was this? After waiting for 4,000 years, the opportunity has finally come. Ha ha, what a great way to start the real Kanglan era. Qin Nan brat, if you dare to make a move in 3 days, I will do my best to help you. At that instant, the desolated battle spirit and the rest of the terrifying experts, and the ancient existences who were hesitant before were overjoyed, as their blood began to boil. This time, they did not hesitate in the slightest. They made the most important decision of their lives. Master, we should follow Alliance leader Qin Nan and attack the Southern Heaven Gate. Spread the word, everyone is to prepare for battle. Even though our cultivation is weak, for the sake of the real Kanglan era, we have to support Alliance leader Qin Nan with all we have. I failed to marry her because of my martial spirit, and I failed to secure the monarch horoscope despite participating in 3 battles. Even if I'm only the martial ancestor, I'll still join forces with Alliance leader Qin Nan in 3 days' time. He said that the battle will begin in 3 days, so it's really 3 days later? Perhaps they are here to trick the Southern Heaven Gate and the others. That makes sense. Even though Qin Nan has become the strongest martial god of all times and has the help of Empress Feiyue and the rest of the authorities, it's still not easy for him to shatter the South Heaven Gate. Why would he tell us the time? There's no need to say anything now. If the Heaven's Resentment bell rings in 3 days, then everything will be real. Many of the smaller powers and rogue cultivators had already made up their minds. However, there were also a large number of smaller powers and rogue cultivators who had calmed down and didn't make a move. They were very cautious. After all, their cultivations were weak, different from those ancient existences. There were some things they didn't understand at all, so they could only wait. They would only make a decision when everything really happened. Meanwhile, on the second continent, the 7 luminaries' flying sword floated in the air. The Martial Serendipity Pavilion, Martial God Zhan Yuan, Madame Heavenly Fortune, the Master of the Tao Origin Heavenly Mountain, and the rest of the authorities were present. On top of that, several powerful figures flew into the rift and joined the Anti-Heaven Alliance. After declaring war, they did not hide inside the 7 luminaries' flying sword like before. Instead, they directly appeared in this world. They were no longer afraid of the South Heaven Gate and the others. As for Qin Nan, he was currently at a treasure trove on the continent with his eyes closed. His aura was calm. He had just become the strongest martial god of all times. He still needed some time to stabilize his cultivation and familiarize himself with his new power. If it weren't for that, he would only need a few hours to make his move on the South Heaven Gate. Primary Force, listen to my command. A few dozen li away from Qin Nan, Empress Feiyue continued to attack, summoning streams of primary force from the sky. Since her future life had died, she had become the only ruler of this continent. She had already altered the rules, thus no one's cultivation would be suppressed to the level of an ordinary person. As such, she could easily summon the streams of primary force with a single command. The monarch glow emitted by the Dragon Emperor, Tang Qingshan, Sima Kong, and the others grew brighter under the influence of the primary force. They were on the verge of achieving the martial god realm and achieving their own martial monarch realm. Martial Serendipity Pavilion, gather all cultivators above the martial monarch realm who have sworn an oath in an hour's time to cultivate here. Empress Feiyue remained expressionless. Snow drifted around her as she transmitted her thought. The second continent was no longer useful to her. She would rather gather most of the primary force to help the others cultivate. Qin Nan suddenly opened his eyes. Empress Feiyue frowned too. It seems like the present life has shown up. Empress Feiyue glanced at him and said, I'll deal with her. Once it's done, I'll help you shatter the South Heaven Gate. Saying this, she flew out of the Kanglan continent with a flicker. Qin Nan did not overthink it. He went into seclusion again. If the present life of the tribulation of 3 lifetimes had shown up, it meant Empress Feiyue had successfully overcome the tribulation of 3 lifetimes. If he hadn't, there wouldn't have been a tribulation shadow in this life. Meanwhile, somewhere mysterious in the South Heaven sacred ground, South Heaven Gate, what should we do under these circumstances? The master of the god-beast forbidden ground and the rest of the patriarch-level authorities spoke with a hint of anger. At the same time, their hearts were filled with regret. If they had known this would happen, they would not have bothered to harm Qin Nan and his crew regardless of the benefits and risks they were willing to take. Now that Qin Nan had achieved the martial god realm and announced it to the world, he even had Empress Feiyue's help. It was hard to tell how many experts would be willing to lend them a hand. It was harder for the South Heaven Gate to stop the Anti-Heaven Alliance than ascending the heavens. Watch your tone. The South Heaven Gate said coldly, we have no choice but to fight with our full strength. They might be strong, but why should we be afraid of them with the strength of our true selves? Even though it was not afraid, it was extremely furious too. They were forced to use the strength of their true selves. Even if they won the battle, they would have to pay a great price. It would take them tens of thousands of years to recover their strength. The South Heaven Gate is right. Prepare for the battle with all your might. After killing Qin Nan and his crew, we'll give you great benefits. The god-ranking said with a dark expression. Prepare for the battle? The master of the god-beast forbidden ground and the rest of the authorities hesitated. In the end, they clenched their teeth. They had no other choice. That goddamn Qin Nan. Heaven God Lu cursed in his heart. His expression was even darker than the god rankings. Blue veins surfaced on his forehead. Only he knew how difficult it would be for Qin Nan and Empress Feiyue to win the battle, even if they were to send their true selves out. It seems like we have no choice but to bring forward the plan. Chapter 15:19. The Heaven Resentment Bell is broken. Time gradually passed a few hours later. While the entire Kanglan continent was in an uproar, they had no idea that an icy woman was unleashing a powerful aura in the rift. In addition to it, her aura continued to rise as if there was no limit to it. It soon reached an unbelievable level. She was no longer in the Kanglan continent, thus she no longer had to suppress her cultivation. Senior Empress. A huge army of immortals immediately noticed her presence. They turned around and were overjoyed. If one were to take a closer look, they would notice that their figures were trembling subconsciously. You are my current life? What's your cultivation? Empress Feiyue glanced at the figure in a black robe leading the army whose cultivation was on par with hers. Even someone like her could not help but feel curious. I can't tell you, it's going to break the taboo. It's not a good thing to offend the ancient taboo with your current cultivation. The voice of the figure in a black robe remained icy. She then removed the veil on her face, revealing a glamorous face. However, her eyes were tightly shut. Senior Empress? The immortals were dumbfounded. Why was there another Empress Feiyue here? Why would I lose my eyes? Empress Feiyue frowned when she saw the woman's reaction. I'm here to kill you, the woman in a black robe said coldly. She raised her hand and unleashed a boundless snowstorm in the rift. I've overcome the tribulation of 3 lifetimes, you won't be able to kill me, Empress Feiyue said. Meanwhile, the woman in a black robe had already arrived beside her. She performed a hand seal and summoned countless talismans in the rift. Each talisman had a magnificent figure standing on top of it. They reached out their hands and grabbed at the void. This. Empress Feiyue's eyes widened. Wasn't her current life's cultivation on par with hers? How did she unleash such a terrifying power? To her surprise, the woman in a black robe did not continue to attack. She suddenly transmitted her voice. You must remember. You must not let Qin Nan ascend as an immortal within 100 years. You must wait until 100 years later. Otherwise you will. Empress Feiyue was startled. However, before the black-robed woman could finish her words, a vast and terrifying energy surged out from nowhere, causing the black-robed woman's body to spontaneously combust. She was unable to do anything else. Did you just say something to me? Empress Feiyue frowned once again. She felt like she had heard something, yet she could not recall what it was. The black-robed woman did not speak, but a tear rolled down from the corner of her eye, which was burned into ashes by the mysterious flame. Forget it. Empress Feiyue shook her head. It was enough for her to overcome the tribulation of 3 lifetimes. Once she returned to the 9 heavens, she would be able to fully master the Tao realm. Time continued to pass, and soon 3 days had passed. On this day, almost every cultivator in the Kanglan continent stopped what they were doing and looked into the distance, waiting patiently. Some of the cultivators even went to the Heaven Resentment Bell in person. In the past, the place had never seen any cultivators. Even if a powerful cultivator were to ring the bell, no one would be aware of it. A great battle would ensue after the bell was rung. But now, there were at least 30,000 cultivators gathered within tens of thousands of kilometers of this huge bell that was floating in the air. Among them were many martial monarchs, and even a few martial god realm experts. On top of that, they all had their eyes fixed forward, as they were eager to witness the start of the great battle. Roar. Some time later, a shocking roar exploded in the sky, as an illusionary battle dragon over 10,000 zhang long floated out from the sky with a formidable aura. On top of the battle dragon stood Qin Nan in a crimson-golden armor. His blood hair drifted in the wind as his aura surged into the sky like a peerless dominator. It was the dragon god Aok's soul. It had recovered significantly after acquiring the primary qi. At the same time, it was impressed by Qin Nan's cultivation, thus it decided to fulfill its promise. Behind them were the Martial Serendipity Pavilion, Martial God Zhan Yuan, Madame Heavenly Fortune, and the rest of the experts, and the 7 luminaries flying sword. Qin Nan is here. Everyone's heart trembled violently. Senior Heaven Resentment, I'm the 2nd Alliance leader of the Anti-Heaven Alliance. Following the magical hair sword god, I will be joining hands with the rest of the peerless geniuses to suppress the South Heaven Gate. Qin Nan brought his fists together and said, If you can hear me, I hope you can let the chime of the bell resound across the entire Kanglan continent. For Qin Nan, the little boost from the Heaven Resentment Bell had no effect. However, it was extremely meaningful as it represented a will. Bang! Under the crowd's gaze, Qin Nan unleashed his god force, which transformed into a giant hammer that swung downward. Dong! The giant bell like a godly mountain shuddered and emitted a blinding glow, which transformed into a giant river that encapsulated Qin Nan's figure. The loud chime echoed in the half-god region like the great Tao. It's the chime of the Heaven Resentment Bell. At that instant, the cultivators of the half-god region rose to their feet. Some of them could not help but exclaim that Qin Nan had really declared the war against the heavens on this day. Dong! 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 Unlike the previous chimes, the next chime echoed in every corner of the Kanglan continent, filling the place with unprecedented excitement. Countless cultivators, even though they weren't at the scene, couldn't help but feel their blood boiling. Countless beasts uttered roars into the sky, shaking the clouds. As the second alliance leader of the Anti-Heaven Alliance, I hereby declare the war against the heavens. Qin Nan's will rose to its limit as he swung the giant hammer in his hand. Bang! The giant heaven resentment bell exploded into pieces, which turned into rays of light that entered Qin Nan's body like dragons. Qin Nan's aura skyrocketed once again. The heaven resentment bell. The heaven resentment bell is broken? The cultivators were dumbfounded. They could not believe their eyes. The heaven resentment bell was broken. Did that mean the heaven resentment martial god, who was the first person to oppose the heavens 10,000 years ago, believed Qin Nan would surely win the war? The Kanglan continent no longer needed the heaven resentment bell. Begin. Chapter 1520. The heroes of different factions. Meanwhile, the South Heaven sacred ground. The enormous place that had existed for tens of thousands of years and had been attacked countless times, yet it still managed to hold its position as the ruler of the place. However, it was experiencing an unprecedented atmosphere today. It was a great pressure, especially when the chimes of the bells were heard. No one was talking anymore. The strongest martial god of all times. Not to mention anything else, just these 5 words made their hearts heavy. Since 3 days ago, they had already teamed up with the god ranking, monarch ranking, god beast forbidden ground, and other factions to prepare for the battle. The godly mountains were connected to one another, forming 10 magnificent godly mountain small realms. On top of that, the martial god weapons were stationed in the small realms too. They were secretly activated, ready to be unleashed at any second. The countless deadly formations that the South Heaven sacred ground had accumulated over tens of thousands of years were activated too. They densely covered the sky, reaching an unprecedented level. The god ranking and monarch ranking had sent out their powerful god envoys and monarch envoys. Meanwhile, the god beast forbidden ground and the other factions had awakened the ancient martial gods sealed in ice. On top of that, the South Heaven Gate, the god ranking, and the monarch ranking had spent 3 days and 3 nights modifying the rules of the heavens and earth, allowing them to receive some sort of boost. The 3 authorities had also inserted a significant amount of primary force into the 10 godly mountain small realms, granting them an unbelievable power. However, despite that, they could not help but recall how Qin Nan had hunted down a few hundred martial monarchs on his own after he achieved the martial monarch realm on his own. Now that he had become the strongest martial god of all times, could such a formation really stop him? Senior brother, what should we do? In the first godly mountain small realm, a young man with a childish look raised his head and glanced at his senior brother beside him. His eyes were filled with fear. If you feel that the situation isn't right, just surrender at once. They won't kill you. The young man who was addressed as senior brother raised his head and glanced at the densely packed cultivators in this small world before sending a voice transmission in a low voice. Senior brother, why aren't we leaving? After what the South Heaven Gate and the others have done, many martial monarchs and martial gods have left too. The young man was rather puzzled. We can't leave. After all, Master was forced to swear an oath. He can't leave and can only fight to the death. We have to accompany Master, the young man said. He glanced at martial god Tiandu, who was engulfed in godly glows. His eyes flickered with hatred. Soon, his eyes narrowed slightly. This was because he saw huge cracks appear in the space above the small worlds without any prior signs. In the blink of an eye, they had covered several tens of thousands of kilometers. Rumble! Following a deafening blast, both the martial god realm authorities and the rest of the cultivators subconsciously glanced in the direction of the blast. The space around them began to shatter. A majestic immemorial dragon flew out. On the dragon head was Qin Nan, who had a head full of blood-red hair. He was extremely eye-catching. In comparison, the reputable martial Serendipity Pavilion, the master of the Tao Origin Heavenly Mountain, and the rest of the authorities were not as eye-catching. Qin Nan is here. All the cultivators were startled. This brat, everyone. Martial God Tiandu wore a dark expression. He was about to give the order. However, right at that moment, a series of rumbles exploded in succession in all directions. Pieces of the rift were shattered into pieces. Powerful auras burst out from it and swept the entire South Heaven sacred ground like a surging tide. Kid Qin Nan, you've kept me waiting. I wonder if you can write the character immortal now? Alliance leader Qin Nan, I hope you don't blame me for not following you in the past. I'll do my best today. We swear to follow Empress Feiyue until our deaths. The desolated battle spirit, the headless blood corpse, and some ancient existences had arrived at the battlefield with their factions and artifacts. Qin Nan, you didn't disappoint the Alliance leader of the Magical Hair Alliance. The 9 words Martial God, the Disaster Martial God, and the Godly Exterminator's Flesh, the 3 masters of the Forbidden Grounds that were on par with the Martial Serendipity Pavilion, had arrived at the battlefield with their respective factions. They had made up their minds the moment Qin Nan achieved the Martial God realm, and their successors achieved the Martial Monarch realm. Give Alliance leader Qin Nan our full support, shatter the South Heaven Gate and the God ranking, and bring about the real Kanglan era. On top of it, the martial monarchs, martial gods, and the people of various factions in the distance uttered roars too. From afar, it felt like an unprecedented tide of doomsday was taking place. Why are there so many cultivators? The cultivators in the 10 godly mountains felt their scalps turning numb and their bodies turning cold when they saw the terrifying sight. They had underestimated the influence of Qin Nan's words, and the number of cultivators in the world. Everyone, listen up, don't panic. Once we kill Qin Nan, the rest of the cultivators are not worth mentioning. Listen to my orders, follow the plan. Martial God Tiandu clenched his teeth upon seeing this. His voice echoed in the minds of the cultivators through the mind-linking boulder. Roar, roar, roar. The 10 godly mountain small worlds let out deafening roars like ferocious beasts. Brilliant godly glows burst out of them. The god weapons unleashed their powers and accumulated their power. The countless formations in the air emitted blinding glows as they unleashed their murderous intents. At that instant, the rift within a few 100,000 li was filled with chaos. Are you still not going to show yourselves? If that's the case, I'm going to force my way through. The terrifying god force in Qin Nan's body was awakened instantly. His right arm transformed into the heaven-shattering saber. It emitted a blinding glow as it stabbed into the air. Buzz. Following a shocking saber hum, a terrifying aura swept across the place like a destructive storm. Bang, bang, bang. A series of explosions took place. The countless formations were shattered into pieces as if they had been struck by a great force. The god weapons began to scream and tremble as if they had encountered a terrifying presence. Their god glow dissipated as they lost their ability to fight. Even the 10 godly mountains were no exception. Cracks began to spread across them. Chapter 15:21. Killing without surrendering this. Everyone's expression was completely dumbfounded. Even the Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities were dumbfounded. However, little did they know, the heaven-shattering saber was forged with the right arm of the divine god of battle. If Qin Nan could unleash its full power, he could easily shatter the formations and artifact. Even if it had to destroy the entire Kanglan continent, it would not be a problem. Whoosh! With a flicker, Qin Nan went through the invisible barrier and arrived at the first godly mountain. He glanced at martial god Tiandu, the 7 martial gods, and the rest of the authorities. Qin Nan, even though you've become the strongest martial god of all times, we are now protected by the rules of cultivation. It won't be easy for you to kill us. Martial God Tiandu, the 7 martial gods, and the rest of the authorities were startled. They immediately unleashed their god force and executed their strongest attacks without hesitation. Bang! Qin Nan did not say a single word. He simply threw a punch forward. The overwhelming force instantly shattered the attacks and landed on the figures of the authorities. Martial God Tiandu took the brunt of the attack. He let out a cry of agony before his body was turned into a mist of blood. The patriarch of the South Heaven sacred ground, a great authority, was killed instantly by a single punch. In addition to it, the 7 martial gods were covered in blood as they suffered serious injuries. As for the rest of the authorities, even though they were not seriously injured, the god force in their bodies had dissipated after the impact. Qin Nan had become the strongest martial god of all times. It was completely different from when he became the strongest martial monarch of all times. His body had produced Tao runes and Tao flames. His cultivation had completely surpassed the 4 extremities. With the help of the Heaven Resentment martial god, his true strength was equivalent to the 6th-layer human god realm. He could even face an 8th-layer human god realm expert. Instantly killing a peak martial god was as easy as blowing off dust. Run! The 7 martial gods and the authorities were stunned. They did not dare to face Qin Nan directly. They immediately turned around and fled for their lives. You want to escape in front of me? Qin Nan took a step forward and sealed off the surroundings, preventing them from moving. Following this, a fist intent descended upon them like the wrath of the heavens. The 7 martial gods let out miserable cries as they completely died. The other big shots were also seriously injured and no longer had the strength to fight. This is the number 1 god of all time? Meanwhile, the authorities and the cultivators inhaled deeply. They could not believe their eyes. In just one breath, 8 peak martial gods had fallen. Judging from that, if Qin Nan wanted to destroy the South Heaven sacred ground, as long as the South Heaven gate did not interfere, wouldn't it only take a few breaths for him to do so? Follow the Alliance leader and destroy Southern Sky. The Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities had already witnessed how terrifying Qin Nan was. They swiftly reacted and uttered roars into the sky, awakening the crowd. They split up and headed for the other 9 small worlds. An unprecedented battle in the history of the Kanglan continent immediately took place. Countless explosions echoed throughout the area within a radius of a few 100,000 li. Qin Nan, no, Alliance leader Qin Nan, and everyone else. The God-Beast Forbidden Ground is willing to join the Anti-Heaven Alliance and fight against South Heaven together. The master of the God-Beast Forbidden Ground was utterly terrified by what he had witnessed. He was willing to break his oath and suffer serious injuries just to join the Anti-Heaven Alliance. Alliance leader? The Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the others glanced at Qin Nan. It's too late. Qin Nan wore an expressionless face. His cold voice echoed across the place. Everyone, listen up. Those below the martial ancestor will not be killed if they surrender. Those above the martial ancestor will only be killed, no surrender. He was not a saint, but he was someone who held grudges. He would never forget what these people had done to him in the past. Only their blood could settle the grudges. God-Beast die. With a flicker, Qin Nan traveled across the rift and arrived before the master of the God-Beast Forbidden Ground. Boundless destruction will and the will of the divine god of battle intertwined and combined into a peerless attack. Bang! The pride and imperiousness on the master's face was replaced by endless fear. Before it could react, its enormous figure was devoured, with blood splattering across the sky. Those below the martial ancestor will not be killed. Those above the martial ancestor will only be killed, no surrender. The Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities unleashed shocking auras, causing the remaining 9 godly mountain spaces to tremble vigorously. After experiencing the suction force of the origin chi, Their cultivation bases were no longer the same as before. "It's your turn." Qin Nan glanced at the god envoys, monarch envoys, and the patriarch-level authorities. "Qin Nan, don't you dare!" In the nick of time, a thunderous roar exploded at the end of the South Heaven sacred ground. 4 terrifying auras appeared simultaneously, shaking the great Tao. The rules of cultivation shattered into pieces and surged toward Qin Nan. Heaven God Lu, the South Heaven Gate, and the god ranking could no longer sit still after witnessing Qin Nan's terrifying strength. "Wouldn't it be better if you showed up earlier?" "Why did you have to risk their lives to test my cultivation?" Qin Nan's eyes flickered with a strong battle intent. With a flicker, he drew out the heaven-shattering saber from the rift and slashed forward, shattering the rules of cultivation and leaving a path of chaos behind. Alliance leader, we, Qin Nan, the martial serendipity pavilion and the rest of the authorities, the desolated battle spirit, the 9 words martial god, and the others glanced at Qin Nan. They clearly knew that once they killed the 4 great authorities, the war against the heavens would come to an end. They were planning to join forces with Qin Nan. "I alone am enough." A crimson golden armor appeared on Qin Nan's body with a strong battle intent. It was as if he had turned into a real god of battle, stepping on the chaos. Everyone's mind couldn't help but tremble again. Qin Nan was planning to take on the 4 great authorities on his own? "How impressive of you, Qin Nan. Do you really think you're unbeatable just because you've become the strongest martial god of all times?" Heaven God Lu, the South Heaven Gate, and the god ranking burst out laughing. This time, they had sent their true selves instead of their will. At the same time, they also realized that this was an excellent opportunity. Empress Feiyue had yet to show up, but now Qin Nan had shown himself. If they could defeat Qin Nan, the situation would be resolved. Sky stride blow. In the nick of time, Qin Nan was the first to make his move. He leaped across the chaos path and arrived before the magnificent, ancient, enormous door, slashing forward with his saber. Deep inside the door, a terrifying existence had a blue flame burning in its right eye. It was staring at Qin Nan as if it had transcended everything. This day. Chapter 1522. The monarch ranking withdraws. Bang. A formidable saber intent tore the blue glow apart. The rules of cultivation collided with the South Heaven Gate, causing it to tremble slightly. "Qin Nan, are you seriously ignoring us?" Heaven God Lu was wearing an ancient armor with an immortal intent. His eyes had ancient palaces floating inside them. His aura had reached the 7th layer human god realm. It was the limit of the Kanglan continent. Meanwhile, the god ranking and monarch ranking were completely different than before. They completely revealed their true appearances. They had a head of red hair and a head of white hair. Their faces were full of wrinkles, and they all wore long golden robes with names on them that continuously flickered. These names were the names of the cultivators who had achieved the martial monarch realm, and the martial god realm with the monarch horoscopes and god horoscopes after they had altered the rules of cultivation. The martial serendipity pavilion and the others were among them too. Destruction of the heavens and earth. Qin Nan's battle intent skyrocketed. He threw a punch forward. Wisps of black light surged across the place, as if they were going to construct a world of destruction. The various killing moves executed by the 4 authorities immediately dissipated into nothingness. Heaven-shattering hammer. Sword of Nirvana. The law of obedience. The god ranking flung its sleeves, unleashing a few hundred deadly arts that were famous for their outstanding strength. Not only was it able to absorb a certain amount of power from other martial monarchs and martial gods through the monarch horoscopes and god horoscopes, it could also control the strongest attacks that the authorities had invented with great effort. Sky desolating saber. Qin Nan did not back off. He slashed forward, summoning wisps of sky-desolating qi that transformed into ancient beasts that devoured the attacks. A single slash to overcome 10,000 attacks. Buzz. In the nick of time, immortal glowing chains suddenly appeared and wrapped around Qin Nan at lightning speed, preventing Qin Nan from moving. Heaven God Lu had been accumulating his power. He immediately executed the 5 demons' immortal demon seal when the time came. 1,000 extreme immortal pilgrimage flames. Countless runes appeared on the south heaven gate and formed a crimson-golden flame in the shape of a lotus. It floated toward Qin Nan and melted the chaos in its path. Origin energy! Suddenly, a grayish-white light shot out and entered the fire. Roar! The flames instantly transformed into the silhouette of a 10,000 zhang tall vermilion bird. It set the surroundings ablaze as it swiped at Qin Nan with its giant claws. In the eyes of the South Heaven Gate and the others, even though Qin Nan was the strongest martial god of all times who had mastered the 4 extremities, as long as he was in Kanglan, he would be suppressed by the origin force of Kanglan. Even if this move couldn't kill him, it would at least severely injure him. The light of the great Tao shines in all directions, the rules of the world, Qin Nan uttered thunderously. A blinding blue-golden glow burst out from his body, which traveled across the sky and landed on the figure of the vermilion bird, causing it to come to a stop and let out a series of cries. After achieving the martial god realm, he was able to use the Tao runes in his body to execute his moves. Even though he had no idea what the Tao runes were used for, he clearly knew that as long as his cultivation was strong enough, he would be able to suppress the origin force and the rules of the heavens and earth. What's going on? The 4 authorities were startled. Heaven God Lu, in particular, had yet to ascend as an immortal. Even though he knew the existence of the Tao realm beyond the 4 extremities, he had never seen it with his own eyes. If he knew Qin Nan had mastered the Tao realm, his plan would completely change. Monarch ranking. Heaven God Lu swiftly reacted. He performed a hand seal and yelled. Chaos immortal art. The monarch ranking made its move. The rules of the heavens and earth gathered together and fired a primeval glow. Before Qin Nan could react, the glow suddenly changed its direction and collided with the chains. Monarch ranking, the eyes of Heaven God Lu, the South Heaven Gate, and the God ranking widened. Ha ha, cultivator Qin Nan, I didn't lie to you. Even though I can't help you deal with them, I won't harm you. The monarch ranking burst out laughing. Its figure dissipated as it left the place. The monarch envoys disappeared too. On top of that, the rules of the heavens and earth, and some of the origin force in the 10 godly mountains, had all turned into nothing. Its departure greatly affected the factions of the South Heaven sacred ground. Damn it! The 3 authorities wore unpleasant expressions. They did suspect the monarch ranking, yet they did not expect the monarch ranking to collude with Qin Nan. The monarch ranking left? The martial serendipity pavilion and the rest of the authorities were overjoyed. With the strength that Qin Nan had displayed, without the monarch ranking's help, he would most likely be able to suppress the 3 authorities. Unstoppable step, sky-stride blow. Qin Nan made his move once again. He fully utilized his movement and speed. From afar, it looked like he had split into 3, fighting the 3 authorities separately. Bang! 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 The heavens and earth fell apart. Even the light was devoured. Even though the battle between the martial serendipity pavilion and the rest of the authorities and the experts of the South Heaven sacred ground had reached an unprecedented level, in comparison, Qin Nan's battle against the 3 authorities was even more eye-catching. Qin Nan is suppressing the 3 authorities on his own. The experts of the South Heaven sacred ground sensed something. Their hearts were filled with fear, as they immediately had the urge to flee for their lives. The undefeatable strength that Qin Nan had displayed had made them lose their confidence. Leave Heaven God Lu and the God ranking to me. Go and shatter the South Heaven Gate. At that instant, an icy voice appeared. Boundless snow poured down from the sky and surged at Heaven God Lu and the God ranking. Empress Feiyue had arrived. She immediately executed a peerless immortal art. Each of the snow contained Tao intent, which was able to freeze the origin force and the rules of the heavens and earth. Empress Feiyue. The hearts of Heaven God Lu and the South Heaven Gate sank. However, they had no choice but to fight with all their might. They could no longer run away like the monarch ranking. Qin Nan, are you seriously going to fight me to the death? The monarch ranking is eyeing you from the dark. It won't do you any good. Why don't we stop fighting now? I'll open the Kanglan seal and let you all ascend. The South Heaven Gate uttered a deep roar. Qin Nan's strength had exceeded its expectations. It had never felt so threatened before. As such, it took the initiative to lower its head. In its opinion, Qin Nan and the others insisted on fighting it because it had suppressed the Kanglan seal, preventing them from ascending. Shut up. Chapter 1523. The Peerless Blow, Destruction Battle Saber. Qin Nan did not waste any time. He gathered the destruction will and the will of the divine god of battle on the heaven-shattering saber and slashed forward with a peerless saber glow. It was the strongest move that he had learned so far. Activate all techniques, Southern Heaven Avatar. The South Heaven Gate immediately gathered the primary chi, the rules of cultivation, and the will of the heavens and earth on the gate, which emitted a blinding blue glow. It sensed a shocking threat, which was even scarier than the slash that the magical hair sword god executed at the cost of his life. Bang! Everyone heard an earth-shattering sound and subconsciously turned their heads to look. When they saw it, their eyes were immediately filled with shock. They saw a crack over 8,000 zhang long and 400 zhang deep in the middle of the gate. Even though the South Heaven Gate was magnificent, it still occupied a tenth of its size. In other words, if the same saber glow was unleashed 9 more times, it could easily destroy the entire South Heaven Gate. However, the crack quickly healed at an astonishing speed. Even though the slash was strong enough to face an 8th-layer human god realm expert and kill a 7th-layer human god realm expert, it was still impossible for it to inflict serious damage to the South Heaven Gate. Qin Nan, you've forced me to do this. The South Heaven Gate was infuriated. It let out a furious roar and unleashed blinding rays from deep inside the crack, as if it had just broken a seal. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At that instant, ancient beasts, mysterious artifacts, strange talismans, etc., were unleashed from it, which surged in Qin Nan's direction like a peerless tide. Even Qin Nan felt a lot smaller compared to it. The biggest secret of the South Heaven Gate was not that it had a part of the origin force, but that its body was filled with all kinds of mysterious artifacts. Each of the artifacts possessed a shocking power. If they were not in the Kanglan continent, each of them could easily destroy an Earth God realm expert. However, the spirit of the South Heaven Gate only controlled half of the South Heaven Gate. If it was able to control everything, it could easily unleash the terrifying things hidden deep inside it. It could easily destroy Qin Nan, Empress Feiyue, the God ranking, and the others. The Southern Heaven Gate actually had such a trick up their sleeve? The joy on the faces of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities froze. Spear. Qin Nan transmitted his thought and fought against the godly objects. He had already refined the dragon-killing, Tao-destructing, deity-eliminating spear before it was completed. He could summon it at any time with a single thought. Since the start of the battle, he had been using the spear to test the South Heaven Gate's trump card, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Now, the time had come. Since the Southern Heaven Gate has released the godly object, its control over the Southern Heaven Gate has also reached its weakest point. Qin Nan has Empress Feiyue's help, so he must have some other trump card. I can start preparing now, when the time comes. A few thoughts crossed Heaven God Lu's mind upon seeing this. He secretly activated the trick that he had set up over the past tens of thousands of years. He had no choice but to take the risk. Even if it meant sacrificing his lifespan and everything else, he had to claim the greatest fortunate encounter and become the final victor. We still have a chance to win. The fear in the hearts of the authorities of the South Heaven sacred ground gradually dissipated. Their attacks gradually sharpened as they no longer backed away. Their figures suddenly stiffened as they sensed a shocking aura from a great distance away, causing their hearts to race. Is something flying toward us? The South Heaven Gate, Heaven God Lu, and the God ranking were startled. They immediately glanced at Qin Nan. What kind of trump card did they have? Meanwhile, in the half-god region, following a terrifying explosion, everyone saw an extremely shocking scene. A peerless light flashed through the sky at an extremely shocking speed. Following it, a huge ravine with no visible end appeared in the sky. What was that? The cultivators raised their heads and stared into the sky. Their hearts trembled as their faces were filled with terror. At that instant, they felt like the entire Kanglan continent was about to be shattered into pieces. In less than 10 breaths' time, the cultivators of the South Heaven sacred ground were startled. Even the 3 authorities of the South Heaven Gate were no exception. Each and every one of them could feel an indescribable, suffocating, and terrifying pressure flying towards them. Destruction battle flesh. At that instant, Qin Nan let out a roar as wisps of the destruction will and the will of the divine god of battle burst out and encapsulated his figure, turning him into an ancient giant. In the next moment, a terrifyingly large spear that was over 30,000 feet long appeared before everyone's eyes. The moment it appeared, almost everything lost its brilliance. Regardless of whether it was the big shots, the small worlds of the 10 sacred mountains, or the 3 big shots of the southern heaven gate, none of them were an exception. It didn't look like a spear, but more like a god of destruction. It could destroy everything. South Heaven Gate. Qin Nan sprang into the sky as the giant destruction battle hand reached into the rift and grabbed the spear tightly. Bang bang bang. Despite his current cultivation, the moment he grabbed the spear, he felt like he was being suppressed by an immortal mountain. His body exploded as the god force in his body dissipated. Fresh blood burst out from his body, dyeing the crimson golden battle armor red. Roar! In the nick of time, the force of the primordial rules of the heavens and earth surged across the rift and landed on Qin Nan's figure, granting him a great boost. Be destroyed. Blue veins surfaced on Qin Nan's forehead as he fully unleashed his will. His aura reached an unprecedented level as he swung the spear with all his might and slashed at the South Heaven Gate. The godly objects blocking the path of the South Heaven Gate were turned into nothing in an instant. In addition to it, a series of shocking explosions took place in all directions across the Kanglan continent, shattering the land into pieces. 6 Immortal intense. The spirit of the South Heaven Gate was utterly terrified. However, it instinctively unleashed all its power to defend itself in the nick of time. Following it, the cultivators witnessed the peerless attack that the cultivators and authorities of the Kanglan continent were still talking about for tens of thousands of years. Bang! A terrifying blast echoed in the ears of the cultivators. Chapter 1524. A sudden turn of events. At that instant, the martial monarchs and martial gods sensed a great danger from the surging force. They immediately executed various arts to protect themselves. Even people like Empress Feiyue and Heaven God Lu were no exception. As for the other cultivators, even though the leaders were standing in front of them, they were still heavily injured. Their minds were blank. In front of them, the terrifying force continued to wreak havoc in the entire world. Countless rare phenomena took place in every corner of the half-god region. After an unknown amount of time, all of this gradually began to calm down. It's over? The martial monarchs and martial gods cautiously dispersed the monarch god light around them. They lifted their heads and looked ahead with lingering fear. Qin Nan's attack this time was really too terrifying. Just the force produced by this collision made them feel as if they had experienced a terrible catastrophe. I didn't expect Qin Nan to have prepared such a method. Fortunately, I didn't fight him head-on. Heaven God Lu rejoiced in his heart. At the same time, he looked up. However, when they saw the scene before them, they immediately forgot everything. Unprecedented shock appeared on their faces, and even their souls were trembling. As far as their eyes could see, apart from the 10 godly mountains, the ground and the sky had turned into a deathly still chaos. There was no qi in the chaos. Even the rules of the heavens and earth and the rules of cultivation did not exist. In other words, Qin Nan's spear had temporarily erased the Kanglan continent from existence. All of these were secondary in importance. The South Heaven Gate that had stood firmly in the southernmost land for over 10,000 years, suppressing the Kanglan seal, and was regarded as a nightmare by countless experts and authorities, had an enormous hole like a bottomless abyss on it. The entrance of the cave was several tens of thousands of feet long. It was pitch black and bottomless. The ancient, magnificent, and imperious South Heaven Gate only had a few edges left. It was like a giant frame in a dilapidated state, without any sign of power. F***ck, I miscalculated. Inside the southern heavenly gate there is actually a personal space. Every inch of this space that is destroyed is a sliver of power. The heaven-breaking emperor, who was hiding in the distance, became very depressed when he saw this scene. Even though the spear had destroyed 80% of the South Heaven Gate, he was still dissatisfied. Qin Nan, I didn't expect you to have prepared such a trump card. However, it won't be that easy to destroy me. The spirit of the South Heaven Gate let out a furious roar. Once I've recovered, I'll fight you to the death today. Countless blue rays of light immediately bloomed. Wisps of origin energy were being emitted from the depths of the cave. You can recover? Did this shot fail? The Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities wore pale faces. They had prepared for this attack for almost 10 years and spent a lot of effort on it. If they still could not destroy the Southern Heaven Gate, even if Qin Nan had a heaven-defying cultivation, he would not be able to kill the Southern Heaven Gate in the end. It's fine that I didn't destroy you completely, but now you want to recover? The heaven-breaking emperor let out a hollow laugh. What's going on? As he thought, the spirit of the South Heaven Gate's voice was filled with shock and anger. It noticed that the damage this time was completely different than before. The places that were destroyed were not able to recover at all. South Heaven Gate, stop struggling, you won't be able to escape death today no matter what. Qin Nan was covered in blood. He held the heaven-shattering saber and walked forward. Even though the spear had consumed most of the energy in his body, the remaining energy was more than enough to destroy the South Heaven Gate. Qin Nan, I'm the South Heaven Gate from the 9 heavens, immortal realm. I'm related to a great fortune, yet you dare to injure me like this, I'll kill you. The spirit of the South Heaven Gate went crazy. It unleashed its 6 immortal intents, which merged with the rules of cultivation and the rules of cultivation. It transformed into a giant pitch-black hand grabbing at Qin Nan. It had never been in such a miserable situation since it was born. That being said, regardless of how crazy it was, it would not simply attack recklessly. It knew it was unable to harm Qin Nan with its current strength, thus it was trying to drag Qin Nan deeper into the South Heaven Gate. Many terrifying creatures were hibernating deep inside the place, thus killing Qin Nan was not a problem at all. Master, there's a change of plans. It's enough that 80% of the South Heaven Gate is destroyed. You don't have to destroy the pitch-black hand. Just let it bring you deeper into the South Heaven Gate. I'll be waiting for you here." The divine god of battle's voice echoed in Qin Nan's mind. Qin Nan came to a stop. He quickly made up his mind and transmitted his voice. "Copper Mirror, the divine god of battle is inside the South Heaven Gate. I'll go see him first. Help me stop them." His figure turned into a saber glow slashing forward. However, in the eyes of the others, the pitch-black hand was too powerful. It grabbed Qin Nan's saber glow and dragged him deep into the South Heaven Gate. "The divine god of battle is inside the South Heaven Gate?" Empress Feiyue's icy eyes flickered. "People of the South Heaven sacred ground, listen up. Qin Nan is dead. Kill all the scum of the Anti-Heaven Alliance at once." The spirit of the South Heaven Gate uttered a roar. Killing a single Qin Nan was not enough to satisfy its anger. "Qin Nan is dead?" The Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities were stunned. This scene happened too quickly, and they were all caught off guard. "Qin Nan is dead. Kill the scum." The experts and authorities of the South Heaven sacred ground were startled hearing this. Since Qin Nan was dead, the remaining people of the Anti-Heaven Alliance were no longer a threat to them. Haha, who would have thought this would be the outcome in the end? Heaven God Lu burst out laughing. He performed a series of hand seals, causing blood-red rays to burst out from the chaos. His gaze suddenly turned cold as he stared deep into the South Heaven Gate. Even though Qin Nan was dead, and they had a great chance of winning the battle, it was still a great opportunity. There was no need for him to change his plan and wait any longer. Heaven God Lu, the spirit of the South Heaven Gate, suddenly realized something. Over the past 10,000 years, I've taught you how to control the South Heaven Gate, how to practice various immortal arts, how to compete with the God ranking and monarch ranking. It's time for you to repay my kindness. Chapter 1525. Merged with the battle flesh following it, countless blood formations appeared in the rift and encapsulated the damaged South Heaven Gate. It felt like countless immortals and demons had appeared and were murmuring chants, as if they were conducting an ancient ritual. Unlike Qin Nan, Heaven God Lu did not enter the South Heaven Gate's space. He entered the spirit of the South Heaven Gate instead. He had planned for 10,000 years and made countless preparations just to devour the spirit of the South Heaven Gate. The spirit of the South Heaven Gate had no idea how the South Heaven Gate was related to the Nine Heavens immortal realm, but he was well aware of all the secrets. Once he mastered the South Heaven Gate, he would be able to unleash its power and acquire the fortunate encounters. Once he succeeded, he would have a great chance of reaching Empress Feiyue's level and becoming a peerless ruler in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. Not long after, the spirit of the South Heaven Gate let out a cry of agony. The aura of the damaged ancient gate changed continuously, as if it was undergoing some kind of alternation. He has fought against us for over 10,000 years, yet he ended up like this. The god ranking shook its head with a pitiful look. However, it was in a great mood. Qin Nan was dead, thus the greatest threat was no longer there. It did not even need to deal with the people of the Anti-Heaven Alliance. Interesting. Empress Feiyue's eyes glittered. She did know a thing or two about the South Heaven Gate. However, was it a coincidence that the fifth immortal had left a trap in the South Heaven Gate? Or was it intentional? Whoosh. A few moments later, the spirit of the South Heaven Gate stopped crying out in agony. The blue glow emitted by the South Heaven Gate suddenly turned purple, resulting in a blinding sight. The aura of the South Heaven Gate was stronger than before. Over 10,000 years, it's been over 10,000 years, the South Heaven Gate is finally in my hands. Heaven God Lu's voice echoed between the heavens and earth in excitement. However, His voice turned cold as he recalled something. "You bunch of ants dare to harm me, I'll make you suffer a fate worse than death." If Qin Nan and Empress Feiyue were here, he would be a little intimidated. However, now that Qin Nan was dead, he had taken control of 70% of the South Heaven Gate's space. It was more than what the spirit of the South Heaven Gate had in the past. Empress Feiyue alone would not be able to stop him. At the same time, in the deepest part of the Southern Heaven Gate, unbeknownst to Heaven God Lu, Qin Nan was still alive. He was walking forward step by step in the darkness. Even though he was unable to see his surroundings with his eye technique, he keenly sensed several terrifying existences lurking nearby. These terrifying things were completely different than the godly objects that the spirit of the South Heaven Gate had unleashed. Qin Nan could feel his body tensing just from the auras that they were emitting. Roar! Suddenly, a pair of enormous crimson eyes appeared in the darkness, and a beast claw the size of a mountain slammed toward Qin Nan's body. The other terrifying existences were staring at the scene too. If there wasn't anything special about this human, they would definitely strike out without hesitation to share some of his blood for themselves. Crap! Qin Nan was startled. The murderous intent in the darkness was strong enough to kill an earth god. He had no chance of stopping it. "Are you trying to die?" A cold voice rang out in the darkness. The crimson eyes immediately flickered with fear. It immediately withdrew its claw and fled for its life. What Qin Nan did not notice was that the terrifying beings staring at him in the darkness immediately dropped to the ground and trembled in fear, as if they had encountered their natural predator. Whoosh! A blue flame burst into flames in the distance, as an enormous, incomplete body appeared in front of Qin Nan. Divine God of Battle! Qin Nan felt an indescribable emotion rising in his heart upon seeing this. The Divine God of Battle, his greatest fortunate encounter. The Divine God of Battle was the main reason why he was able to come so far, alter his destiny, and achieve breakthroughs in his cultivation. He had sworn an oath to destroy the South Heaven Gate to retrieve the remaining body parts of the Divine God of Battle. However, he had developed a grudge against the South Heaven Gate because of the princess, Jiang Bailan, and the others. "Master, I initially planned to meet you in person after you've shattered the South Heaven Gate and overturned the Kanglan continent, but the beast hide drawing showed up in advance. I had no choice but to meet you in advance to prevent it from noticing." The Divine God of Battle spoke with an imperious voice. However, the terrifying existences in the surroundings could clearly tell that the Divine God of Battle's tone was full of respect. "Divine God of Battle, who is the beast hide drawing? And what's your name? I heard from the beast hide drawing that my identity." Qin Nan kept asking. He had accumulated too many doubts in his heart. "Master, I can't tell you anything for the time being. Some things have long become taboo. Once you mention them, it will bring a great calamity to the secondary lower realm, or even the 9 heavens immortal realm." The Divine God of Battle added, "However, you will learn more about them after you ascend as an immortal." As a matter of fact, he had a strong urge to tell Qin Nan everything. However, he had to withhold his urge for the sake of the bigger picture. Ascend as an immortal? Qin Nan frowned slightly. The beast hide drawing did mention that he had to ascend as an immortal if he wanted to save Princess Meow Meow. "Master, I was supposed to be a dead man. I've only managed to survive until today with some law-defying method." The right eye of the Divine God of Battle looked at Qin Nan and said, "Now that you've achieved the martial god realm and embarked on the path of cultivation, I have no regrets." Qin Nan fell silent and listened carefully. The left eye, the heaven-shattering saber, and the sacred Lord Blue Dragon in the past, and now the remaining body of the Divine God of Battle, he could feel the sincerity of their friendship every time. I won't be able to accompany you for the rest of the journey. I can only merge with your body and conquer the 9 heavens together with you. You will encounter countless dangers and enemies in the future. I hope you can remember that the 5th Immortal, whose Tao title is the Divine God of Battle, has acknowledged you as his master. No one in the 9 heavens and 10 lands has the right to look down on you. The remaining body of the Divine God of Battle dropped to one knee. Its bones turned into a magnificent blue glow and entered Qin Nan's body. Not even. Song. An imperious aura soared into the sky. Its right eye seemed to have traveled across time and space and fixed its gaze on the 9 heavens' immortal realm, as if it was trying to tell someone something. The terrifying beings nearby let out cries of agony as their figures dissipated. Heaven God Lu, who had mastered the South Heaven Gate, suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Bang! Chapter 1526. Ownerless Heaven Pattern. Meanwhile, the South Heaven's sacred ground. Chains of the Netherworld, shatter at my command. Mystics of the South Heaven, heed my command. Heaven God Lu made his move. He performed a hand seal, shattering the chains at the spot where the South Heaven Gate was destroyed, as if a huge door had been opened. At that instant, a total of 33 terrifying auras were fired into the sky from deep within the pitch-black darkness, causing the surroundings to tremble. Is that? The eyes of the authorities widened. A great chill ran down their spines as they sensed a shocking danger from the 33 auras. Haha, that idiot spirit of the South Heaven Gate is no match for me. The 33 artifacts that I've found have almost ascended as immortals. Heaven God Lu burst out laughing. Once I have a better grasp of the South Heaven Gate, I'll summon the artifacts that have ascended as immortals and annihilate all of you ants. He completely bared his fangs and unleashed his true nature. He was completely disdainful toward the cultivators of the Kanglan continent. He was an inner disciple of the Lu clan of the 9 heavens, and his father was one of the elders of the Lu clan. It went without saying that he was extremely prideful in his bones. However, he had been hiding his true nature for the past 10,000 years. However, before he could finish his words, his expression suddenly changed. The 33 artifacts soon revealed their true appearances. There were the brass immortal corpse, the crimson flame beast bones, the incomplete pagoda, etc. The auras they were emitting were quite powerful, yet they were covered in serious injuries and were trembling continuously. They did not have any aura to speak of. The experts and authorities no longer felt any chill in their hearts after seeing them. They were not afraid at all. How did this happen? Heaven God Lu wore a displeased expression. I'm a little disappointed. A charming grin appeared on Empress Feiyue's icy face. This Heaven God Lu was too full of himself. The 5th Immortal had set up a trap deep inside the South Heaven Gate. It was already a relief that these artifacts were not destroyed. South Sky Mystic Control, kill. Heaven God Lu collected his thoughts. He clenched his teeth and forcibly ignited his power as the weapon spirit to control the 33 artifacts. Roar. The 33 supreme treasures reignited their auras. Like invincible generals, they charged through the air. Even though they were forcibly controlled and their battle prowess was less than 30%, they were still very terrifying. How long are you going to be immersed in this? Qin Nan has created one miracle after another. Is he really going to die this time? Empress Feiyue flicked her finger, causing the snow to fall rapidly as she snapped coldly at the Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities. The figures shuddered slightly as their eyes flickered with a flicker. Just as the Empress had said, Qin Nan had created one miracle after another for them. How could such a person die so easily? Alliance Master is definitely not dead. We can't back down until the very end. the martial serendipity pavilion roared into the sky and sent a message to the crowd, leading the charge. A great battle broke out once again. At this moment, in the deepest part of the southern heavenly gate, a brilliant blue glow lit up the place. Countless voices were echoing in the air, as if the bells of the great Tao were being rung. Before Qin Nan could react, before he could say anything to the divine god of battle, his body underwent a tremendous change. First of all, his skin, flesh, blood, and bones had all turned blue, emitting an indescribably terrifying battle intent. The strength of his flesh had reached a terrifying level. Qin Nan felt like his body was filled with endless power. Even if he did not rely on any god arts, he could easily block the attacks of peak deities or even kill a peak deity with his body alone. On top of that, Qin Nan also had a feeling that this was only the tip of the iceberg when it came to the strength of his flesh. It was similar to the heaven-shattering saber, which would grow stronger as his cultivation improved. However, there was one thing he was not sure about. If the flesh of the divine god of battle of the fifth immortal was at its peak and merged with Qin Nan's body, his flesh would be comparable to the earth god realm, or even the heaven god realm. However, the divine god of battle had been dead for more than 10,000 years. He had even used a great amount of power to do certain things, thus he was no longer as strong as before. Buzz. His eyes began to evolve too. An illusionary blue flame burned fiercely in them, while his eyes emitted a golden glow. It was the golden eyes of the divine god of battle. Not only was it able to see through everything, it also possessed a powerful eye technique that could alter the situation and execute deadly moves. When the divine god of battle was at his peak, the golden eyes of the divine god of battle were comparable to the 10 great eye technique. Even though Qin Nan only possessed a millionth of his full strength, it was still extremely useful against a human god or even an earth god. Bang bang bang! Suddenly, a tremendous force burst out of Qin Nan's divine sense and surged in all directions. Following this, the magnificent force rapidly contracted and turned into a blue light dot. The speck of light quietly floated in the air. Furthermore, it continued to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, it turned into an azure flower. It had a total of 7 petals, all of which were covered in mysterious patterns. There was even a wisp of green aura on the stamen, which constantly trembled and emitted a mysterious power. Immortal? Immortal root? Qin Nan was startled. He had learned about the immortal root when his soul entered Qiuhong's body in the 9 heavens. However, the immortal root that was born in his divine sense was many times stronger than Qiuhong's immortal root. Following it, the immortal root began to change again. Lines of ink-like runes began to spread from the bottom, outlining an eerie pattern. The pattern did not have any ancient words, yet for some reason, Qin Nan immediately thought of a name: the ownerless heaven pattern. What's this? Qin Nan could still understand the evolution of his body, eyes, and immortal root, but he was utterly confused about the ownerless Tao pattern. Before he could ponder further, a tremendous force surged into the god force in his dantian. At that instant, his aura skyrocketed. 8th layer human god realm. 9th layer human god realm. 10th layer human god realm. His aura continued to rise. It broke through a huge barrier within the blink of an eye, allowing the god force in Qin Nan's body to evolve and reach the earth god realm. On top of that, it did not stop there. Meanwhile, the Tao fire and the Tao rune in his body slowly merged into one, as if they had been strengthened by some kind of supreme force. Chapter 1527. The Greater Success Stage of the Tao Realm. Meanwhile, the South Heaven Sacred Ground. Bang! 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 Empress Feiyue was leading the way. She executed a series of ancient immortal arts to stop the 30 artifacts from moving any further. As for the back, even though the experts of the South Heaven's sacred ground were confident, the martial Serendipity Pavilion and the other authorities still had the upper hand. God ranking, what are you waiting for? Heaven God Lu transmitted his voice. Qin Nan is dead, everything has come to an end, the spirit of the God ranking said calmly. Even though Qin Nan is dead, those people have achieved the martial monarch realm on their own too. They will surely pose a threat to you in the future. Heaven God Lu thought of something. If you're willing to help, I'll give you half of the Kanglan continent. That's a deal. The spirit of the God ranking did not waste any time. It performed a hand seal and summoned illusionary figures of martial monarchs to form an army. It did not attack, nor did it leave, as it was waiting for its reward. The great Tao is sealed. Empress Feiyue's expression remained the same. A magnificent glow of the great Tao burst out of her body, which turned into a terrifying icy intent that surged across the place. It felt like the world had turned into a kingdom of ice, with her as the ruler. As expected of Empress Feiyue, to still be able to stabilize the situation after the God ranking joined the battle. Heaven God Lu was still respectful toward Empress Feiyue. However, his lips soon curled into a twisted grin. But you won't be able to protect them either. Buzz. The damaged South Heaven gate shuddered all of a sudden. A boundless blue glow surged deep into the darkness where the gate was destroyed, forming an ancient formation. South Heaven Decree, the return of the 6 immortals. Wisps of ancient immortal glow were emitted deep inside the formation, as 6 crystalline corpses with imperious auras slowly appeared. All the experts and authorities who were in the middle of a fight froze in their tracks as their hearts trembled. Even though the 6 corpses were covered in wounds and did not possess any auras, the auras they emitted were greatly suppressing them. It was like a martial progenitor realm cultivator facing a peak martial god. Your control over the South Heaven Gate has reached such an extent? Empress Feiyue was a little surprised. She wore a stern look too. Of course. Heaven God Lu once again controlled the 6 corpses. They went around Empress Feiyue and formed an ancient formation to attack the people of the martial Serendipity Pavilion. Form the formation. The martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities were astounded, as if they were facing a formidable foe. Empress Feiyue in the distance flicked her finger and summoned an icy intent that turned into 100 ice dragons surrounding the 6 corpses. She wanted to stop the corpse and defend it on her own. Don't even think about it. The god ranking uttered a roar as the golden robe on its body flew out and transformed into a pattern of monarch gods looming over Qin Nan. I forgot to mention, these 6 corpses are not ordinary corpses. They all cultivated the same celestial art when they were alive, so they could share their power. Heaven God Lu sneered and changed his hand seal. The 6 corpses let out a roar as the immortal glow on their bodies merged into a terrifying illusionary figure over 1,000 zhang tall. The aura of the illusory figure trembled, shattering all of the ice dragons. Kill! The illusionary figure uttered a roar and swung its hand forward. Meanwhile, at the deepest part of the South Heaven Gate, Qin Nan, use all your power to merge the Tao Rune and the Tao Fire. Suddenly, the illusionary figure of a young man appeared from the ancient beast hide scroll and yelled. It immediately made its way here when it realized that Qin Nan had entered the South Heaven Gate ahead of time. However, it was still a little too late, as it did not see what had happened before. Qin Nan was startled. He immediately withheld the god force that was still growing after reaching the second layer Earth God realm. That vast and majestic power seemed to have a mind of its own. After sensing it, it did not resist at all and rushed into the Tao pattern and Tao fire. Bang! At that instant, a tremendous glow sprang into the sky. The darkness deep inside the South Heaven Gate was illuminated once again. The terrifying existences were overwhelmed with fear once again. This time, they were not intimidated by the aura of the divine god of battle, but the aura inside Qin Nan's body that made them feel extremely cold. Inside Qin Nan's dantian, the Tao rune and the Tao fire no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by a perfectly round blue crystal around the size of half a palm. It was pure and flawless, as if it was born from chaos. Qin Nan could clearly sense that the Tao glow inside the crystal was at least 10 times stronger than the Tao rune and the Tao fire. On top of that, it also had a sublimation of its nature. The realm above the 4 extremities is called the Tao realm. The Tao realm is divided into the Tao rune, Tao fire, Tao crystal, and Tao jade. The greater success stage of the Tao realm after refining the Tao crystal. The young man in the beast hide scroll said calmly. Greater success stage of the Tao realm? Qin Nan was startled. He did not expect his Tao realm to reach such a level without him knowing. However, the difference between the greater success stage of the Tao realm and the 4 extremities is not too obvious. Only after refining the Tao crystal, refining the Tao jade, and comprehending one's Tao will there be a huge difference between the Tao crystal and the 4 extremities. The young man added. He suddenly asked as a thought crossed his mind, Qin Nan, did the divine god of battle tell you where the endless heavenly book is before merging with your body? Qin Nan frowned and said, Endless heavenly book, what's that? Even though the beast hide scroll had never harmed him, the divine god of battle was very cautious of it. He did not fully trust the beast hide scroll, thus he did not mention it. It didn't tell you? Does that guy still have some tricks up his sleeves? The young man frowned. He suddenly noticed something while he was in deep thought. He glanced at Qin Nan's dantian. Qin Nan was startled too. The Tao crystal was still evolving after it was refined. Several purple golden battle dragons around the size of a thumb with 7 claws appeared out of nowhere. They circled the Tao crystal and formed a mysterious seal. Qin Nan came to a sudden realization. It was a trick left by the divine god of battle. He only needed to activate it at a crucial moment to turn the situation around. However, his divine battle spirit was restless too, giving him a strange feeling. He should not activate it unless he had no other choice. Otherwise, it would bring him great danger. Is that? The young man's eyes widened as his heart shuddered. Qin Nan was clueless, but he was well aware of it. The battle dragons formed a seal around the Tao. Once it was activated, it would summon the will of the divine god of battle that was equivalent to 50% of the divine god of battle's strength. The divine god of battle had been dead for more than 10,000 years. How could he still use such a terrifying move? Chapter 1528. Trampling the Heroes. Meanwhile, in the South Heaven's sacred ground, the illusionary figure's palm was like a small world, crushing the formation that the martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities had established. The martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities groaned in pain. Feather great illusionary immortal scriptures. Empress Feiyue's figure unleashed wisps of auras of the 3 lifetimes. Wisps of invisible force poured down from all directions. A terrifying murderous aura was accumulated in the rift, merging the gate and art into one. Heaven God Lu still had a trump card up his sleeve. With a roar, the damaged South Heaven gate crossed the rift and merged with the illusionary figure. Bang! A terrifying aura like a peerless immortal sword tore a huge gap in the chaos deep in the sky. The figures of the authorities instantly felt minuscule compared to it. God ranking, trap Empress Feiyue first. Heaven God Lu commanded the South Heaven Gate to unleash the rules of cultivation. Each of the rules materialized and formed several huge formations. God Monarch Force. The God ranking unleashed its trump card too. It gathered the forces of the authorities and merged them with the rules of cultivation to form an illusionary cage encapsulating Empress Feiyue. Ha ha, even you would need at least 30 breaths to break free. Heaven God Lu burst out laughing. Is that so? Empress Feiyue's expression remained the same. Two terrifying illusionary figures appeared behind her, which turned out to be her past life and future life. The terrifying cage shuddered as the formation shattered into pieces. The smile on Heaven God Lu's face stiffened. He harumphed coldly and said, "Even if it's only 10 breaths, it's more than enough." His gaze locked onto the Martial Serendipity Pavilion and the rest of the authorities through the South Heaven Gate. Mere ants die. The South Heaven Gate shuddered and unleashed an invisible force across the rift, shattering the godly glow encapsulating the Martial Serendipity Pavilion into pieces. The latter groaned and was sent flying with blood all over his body. The Martial Serendipity Pavilion was severely injured with a single blow. Heaven God Lu, don't be too proud yet, Qin Nan isn't dead yet. He will come out from the South Heaven Gate sooner or later. The Martial Serendipity Pavilion forcibly stabilized its figure and uttered a roar. Stubborn fool, Qin Nan is already dead. I'll cripple you first. Heaven God Lu was infuriated. Wisps of blue glow turned into giant swords slashing at the Martial Serendipity Pavilion. His meridians were torn apart and his dantian shattered. Even the Martial Serendipity Pavilion could not help but cry out in agony. Tao Origin, Zhan Yuan, Tianji, 7 luminaries, it's your turn. Heaven God Lu said coldly. Several giant hands grabbed at the figures of the master of the Tao Origin Heavenly Mountain and the others and pinched them. Bang bang bang! Countless bones and meridians were shattered at the same time. The authorities were instantly crippled, losing their cultivations. Their faces twitched from the immense pain they were experiencing. The authorities have lost. Kill the rest of the bastards of the Anti-Heaven Alliance. The authorities of the South Heaven Sacred Ground became excited once again. They waved their hands and executed countless monarch god art. The cultivators of the Anti-Heaven Alliance and other places were instantly destroyed. Cries of agony were heard as blood splattered across the place. The tide of the battle immediately changed. The formation of the Anti-Heaven Alliance and the other factions began to be knocked back. In just a few breaths' time, they were on the verge of collapsing. A battle of this level was different than a battle between ordinary people. If there was a huge difference between the strength of the cultivators, the difference between the strength of the cultivators would be extremely obvious. However, little did they know, a few 100,000 li away from the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the spirit of the monarch ranking had executed a strange move to encapsulate the monarch envoys and conceal their auras. The monarch envoys were observing the battle ahead. Qin Nan is surely not dead. The spirit of the monarch ranking was well aware that Qin Nan's martial spirit was nothing ordinary. It assumed that Qin Nan was still alive. He would come out from the South Heaven Gate and fight against Heaven God Lu and the God ranking until both sides were severely injured. That was what it had been planning all along. That way it would be able to reap the benefit. Even though the plan was extremely simple, it had the advantage of knowing the most information. However, despite having such a thought, it subconsciously clenched its fist. It was slightly nervous. If anything went wrong, it would be severely punished when the battle came to an end. Meanwhile, on the battlefield of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, as the cultivators fell one after another, fresh blood splattered across the sky. The cultivators of the Anti-Heaven Alliance and the other factions were overwhelmed with fear and fear. A few breaths' time had given them a great shock, causing their faith to be shaken. The Alliance leader was being hunted by the whole world and the authorities, yet he still managed to achieve the martial monarch realm and become the strongest martial god of all times. There's no way he's dead. He'll come back and shatter the South Heaven Gate. We have to hold on. The Dragon Emperor transformed into his true form and joined forces with Gong Yang, Longhu, Tang Qingshan, Sima Kong, and the others to defeat the cultivators. Their wills had not wavered in the slightest. Do you still think Qin Nan is still alive? Ants will always be ants. Not only are you weak, you're extremely stupid too. I would like to see how you're going to hold on. Heaven God Lu's eyes sharpened. Several giant immortal spears sprang into the sky and pierced through the rift, aiming at the Dragon Emperor, Gong Yang, and the others. Even with the help of the 9 words martial god and the other authorities, the Dragon Emperor and the others were still knocked flying with serious injuries. Before they could stabilize their figures, countless sword intents were fired from the rift. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sword intents slashed forward wildly, shattering the figures of the Dragon Emperor and the others into pieces, leaving them covered in blood. 7 breaths had passed since then. I was planning to use all the torture methods of the Lu clan on you, but I don't have enough time. I guess I'll have to give it to you. Heaven God Lu uttered a hollow laugh. Giant hands traveled across the rift and grabbed the martial serendipity pavilion, the authorities, and the Dragon Emperor and the others. Die! A blue glow burst out as the giant hands were about to crush them. No! The 9 words martial god and the rest of the authorities were startled. Qin Nan, are you still not going to show yourself? Empress Feiyue's eyes emitted a blinding glow. Her voice was like a thunderclap penetrating the boundless darkness around the South Heaven Gate and reaching the deepest part of the place. Buzz! In the nick of time, a saber chime took place as a terrifying saber intent burst out from the rift and shattered the giant hands into pieces. A figure slowly walked out from the darkness of the South Heaven Gate. Heaven God Lu, how bold of you! The words alone caused the chaos between the heavens and earth to boil like boiling water. Chapter 1529. To be invincible, Qin Nan? The authorities of the South Heaven sacred ground were dumbfounded. The cultivators of the Anti-Heaven Alliance and the other factions reacted the same way too. However, when the figure appeared, it felt like an invisible force was surging into their bodies. The fear in their eyes gradually dissipated, and they became calm. Ha ha, I knew you wouldn't die in the South Heaven Gate. The monarch ranking in the distance burst out laughing with a joyful expression. As such, it had won the bet. Once Qin Nan, Heaven God Lu, and the god ranking were severely injured, it would have the opportunity to crush everything and claim the throne of the Kanglan continent. Qin Nan? Why aren't you dead? You've clearly been swallowed into the deepest part of the southern heavenly gate. It's impossible for you to. Only Heaven God Lu was stunned. That was the deepest part of the South Heaven Gate, where countless terrifying creatures resided. Even a heaven god would not be able to escape death. Qin Nan only had the battle prowess of a mortal god tier 8. How did he survive? Qin Nan, even if you didn't die in there and were lucky enough to come back, so what? The current you is definitely no match for me. Heaven God Lu swiftly collected his thoughts. He let out a roar and paid a great price to establish a formation at the spot where the South Heaven Gate was destroyed. He summoned 10 terrifying creatures from the deepest part of the South Heaven Gate. Although it had a lot of confidence in itself, it still had to be cautious just in case. However, in the next moment, its face was once again filled with shock. The 10 severely injured, trembling existences were soon aware of Qin Nan's presence, causing them to let out cries as if they had stumbled into their nemesis. They immediately retreated back into the formation at a great cost. If they could, they would tear the spirit of the South Heaven Gate into pieces. Just the aura that the man released afterward was enough to make them tremble in fear, not to mention that the man had merged with the incomplete body. And now, the spirit of the South Heaven Gate had allowed them to appear in the same place as the man. Was he tired of living? The spirit of the god ranking was stunned. The joy on the face of the spirit of the monarch ranking froze, while the authorities could not believe their eyes. Kill! Qin Nan had no intention of wasting his time. He slashed forward with the heaven-shattering saber, firing a boundless saber intent that poured down like a heavy rain. In addition to that, Each of the saber intents seemed to have a mind of their own. They avoided the cultivators of the Anti-Heaven Alliance and landed on the authorities of the South Heaven sacred ground. Both the martial god and the martial ancestor were powerless to resist, and were all slashed into pieces by the saber intent. Your cultivation. Heaven God Lu suddenly realized that Qin Nan's cultivation had improved significantly. However, before it could react, a terrifying murderous intent locked onto it. Skystride strike. Qin Nan descended from the rift and slashed forward with the heaven-shattering saber. The icy saber glow shattered the 6 immortal corpses in the blink of an eye. Crap! God Lu suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of danger. Without any hesitation, he instinctively retreated, quickly retreating behind the spirit of the god ranking. The spirit of the god ranking was startled, as the terrifying murderous intent had locked onto it. God Monarch. It did not have the time to scold Heaven God Lu. Its body shivered as its heart shuddered. Its survival instinct allowed it to react by executing its strongest move to resolve the danger. Destruction Battle Saber. The Destruction Glow and the Divine Battle Glow were unleashed simultaneously. The two merged into a terrifying saber intent that slashed forward. The God Monarch Glow shattered into pieces. The eyes of the god ranking widened. It could not react in time. It could only watch the remaining saber intent slashing into its body. Buzz. At that instant the entire Kanglan continent shuddered slightly. Many rules of the heavens and earth began to collapse after losing their support. Meanwhile, in the battlefield of the God Horoscope contest in the land of the deceased gods, a terrifying storm swept across the land and the rules. The chains binding the God horoscopes and monarch horoscopes that were trapped in the God horoscopes broke into pieces. One of the 3 great authorities that could control the rules of the Kanglan continent, the spirit of the God ranking had fallen. God ranking. At that instant, the spirit of the monarch ranking and the authorities in the distance blurted out in a trembling voice. What did the 5th immortal leave for him? How did he evolve so much? Even Empress Feiyue's icy eyes flickered with astonishment. Whoosh! Qin Nan did not stop there. The heaven-shattering saber left his hand and slashed at the damaged South Heaven Gate. It penetrated the illusionary figures of the 6 immortal corpses and shattered them into pieces. Qin Nan Yu. Heaven God Lu's eyes finally flickered with fear. The death of the spirit of the god ranking had given him a great shock. 4th form of the divine god of battle, death upon the area. Qin Nan swung his hand. The saber glow did not appear, nor did anything else, yet the damaged South Heaven Gate received a terrifying blow. If Qin Nan fully executed the move, his opponent would not be able to escape from it no matter what they tried. They would have to endure it with brute force. However, Qin Nan was only able to cover an area of 1 li bang. The chaos froze. The rules fell silent. The South Heaven Gate collapsed once again. Only less than 10% of it was left. Similar to the dragon-killing Tao-destructing deity-eliminating spear, Qin Nan was unable to recover it even with the origin force. Golden eyes of the divine god of battle. Qin Nan's eyes emitted a blue-golden glow. A terrifying eye technique penetrated the South Heaven Gate and stared at Heaven God Lu, who was the spirit of the South Heaven Gate. Qin Nan, what are you doing? I'm an inner disciple of the Lu clan. If you kill me, the Lu clan will never forgive you, and the immortal fortune behind the South Heaven Gate, Heaven God Lu was devoured by fear. If you let me go, I'll give you everything, for some, the stronger their cultivation was, the stronger their backbone was. However, there were also some who had no backbone despite their cultivation. Heaven God Lu was the latter. In his eyes, backbone was worthless. The only thing that mattered was staying alive. It's too late. Qin Nan wore a cold expression. He held the heaven-shattering saber and accumulated a strong saber intent. At that instant, countless rare phenomena took place across the Kanglan continent. Every cultivator in the Kanglan continent raised their heads and looked toward the south, as if they had sensed something. The invisible pressure caused them to hold their breath. Whoosh! Chapter 1530. Kanglan airtime and space slowed down at that instant. The South Heaven Gate was different from the God ranking. Not only did it alter the rules of cultivation of the Kanglan continent, it also suppressed the Kanglan seal. Apart from Empress Feiyue, the rest of the authorities were all stopped by it. Its life and death, its destruction and its survival, was the true crossing of eras. In the nick of time, a powerful mysterious force burst out from deep inside the South Heaven Gate all of a sudden. It turned into a barrier that blocked the slash with brute force. Empress Feiyue's eyes glittered. Boom! A brilliant immortal glow burst out from the South Heaven Gate and soared into the clouds. It was as if a tunnel had been opened, from which a terrifying aura descended upon the Kanglan continent. What is this? The expressions of all the experts present changed dramatically. Even though nothing had happened, they could feel a peerless dominator staring down at them from the sky of the Kanglan continent, causing their souls to tremble. Could it be the immortal opportunity related to the southern heavenly gate? Heaven God Lu soon collected his thoughts. His face was filled with joy. Ants of the lower realm, listen up, the South Heaven Gate is my natal artifact. If you dare to hurt it again, I will exterminate your entire clan and destroy your world. You must repair the damage to it at all costs. The thunderous voice echoed across the heavens and earth. Every word and sentence was like a supreme great Tao that no living thing dared to disobey. Scram! Qin Nan was not in the mood to listen to his nonsense. He gathered all the force in his body on the heaven-shattering saber and slashed forward with a peerless glow. He didn't care what realm the owner of this voice was in. He only knew one thing. Apart from the cultivators of the Kanglan continent, the blood debt of the South Heaven Gate alone would be paid with blood. You! The thunderous voice was immediately filled with astonishing fury. Its main body had never thought that a mere ant from the lower realm would dare to tell it to piss off. However, no matter how furious he was unable to cross the boundless space and descend with his true power. Even though the difference between Qin Nan's strength was like the difference between the heavens and earth, the peerless slash still shattered the immortal glow that Qin Nan had unleashed. Southern Heaven Gate, Heaven God Lu die. Qin Nan's blood hair danced wildly as he unleashed a shocking aura. He activated the two innate sword embryos that the magical hair sword god had left him and merged with the heaven-shattering saber. Boom! A killing technique that resembled both a saber and a sword had become the ultimate killing technique of the ages. All the cultivators present saw a scene that seemed to last forever. The severely damaged South Heaven Gate and Heaven God Lu who was inside it were all torn to pieces. The cries of agony echoed across the entire Kanglan continent. In the next moment, countless specks of blue light swept out for millions of miles. As for the spatial world within the southern heavenly gate, it was as if the only path to the mortal realm had been severed. It fell into eternal darkness and ceased to exist. The 10 godly mountain small worlds and the cultivators of the South Heaven's sacred ground began to collapse as their auras weakened after losing their support. Following it, the entire Kanglan continent began to change. Wisps of the rules of the heavens and earth and the rules of the martial path collapsed into nothingness. Every cultivator's body shuddered violently as the martial spirits of heaven, earth, Xian, and Huang vanished from their bodies. The martial spirits are gone. Does that mean Qin Nan has shattered the South Heaven Gate? The eyes of the cultivators across the continent widened as their hearts skipped a beat. However, that was not the end of it. The sky of the Kanglan continent became clear, as if it had been cleansed by clear water. Even though the cultivators did not see any changes, they could feel the land and the sky, the mountains and rivers, and the woods, and even the gentle breeze that swept past them made them feel extremely comfortable. Following this, in the southernmost land where Qin Nan and the others were, countless rays of pure white light illuminated all of the chaos. They gathered forward as if they were being summoned, which eventually formed a mystical seal covering an area of over 10,000 li. As soon as the seal was activated, every peak martial god realm authority felt like a chain had been broken in their hearts, allowing them to faintly sense the presence of the seal. In the secondary lower realm, every continent or world had the same seal. It was also known as the Seal of Ascension. The seal was produced by the Great Tao. As long as the seal existed, any peak martial god realm cultivator could trigger the tribulation of ascension. After overcoming it, they would ascend to the upper heavens. Monarch ranking, you have 3 breaths time to make your decision. Are you going to cripple yourself, or die to my saber? 1, 2. Qin Nan remained still and stared into the distance. I'll cripple myself. Cripple myself! The spirit of the monarch ranking was utterly terrified by what had just happened. When it sensed the bone-chilling intent, it immediately made its decision without hesitation. At the same time, it was extremely regretful in its heart. The fisherman benefits from the fight between the sandpiper and the clam? Benefit my ass, it shouldn't have stood between the two sides. It should have bet everything to help Qin Nan. Following this, the glow on the monarch ranking began to dissipate. The darkness of the Kanglan continent that had lasted for over 10,000 years finally came to an end. Every cultivator of the Kanglan continent was free from their chains. They could now achieve the martial monarch realm and martial god realm with their own strength. They could even witness the magnificent upper heavens. We won. The martial serendipity pavilion and the rest of the cultivators could not believe what they had just seen. A few moments later, the crowd burst into cheers. Both the martial gods and the cultivators with weaker cultivations wore unprecedented joy on their faces. He was so happy that he was crying tears of joy, his face full of tears. Perhaps in the future, the martial path would still be cruel. Many of them would still fail to achieve the martial monarch realm and martial god realm, but at least from this moment onward, they were no longer pawns. They now had hope. The world was clean too. At that instant, a brilliant glow dyed the heavens and earth. Guqin, flute, etc., combined into a pleasant melody that echoed in everyone's ears. Wisps of primary light emitted from the rift and landed on Qin Nan and the cultivators that were fighting against the South Heaven's sacred ground. It was the primordial rules of the heavens and earth. After the monarch ranking, god ranking, and South Heaven Gate had fallen, the remaining primary force naturally returned to its body. You've accomplished an immortal feat. From now on, your name will be passed down for generations. How do you feel now? Empress Feiyue surprisingly did not wear a cold expression. She asked Qin Nan calmly. Qin Nan's aura had recovered. He did not speak. He raised his head and looked at the 7 luminaries' flying sword in the distance. His gaze landed on a crystal in the sword as he stared at it in silence. The crystal seemed to have sensed something. It emitted a white glow and a black glow simultaneously. They must be proud of him. There's only one thing I want to do now. Some time later, Qin Nan withdrew his gaze and transmitted his thought to the primordial rules of the heavens and earth. A voice that every cultivator, or even every living thing, would remember for the rest of their lives echoed in their ears. Chapter 1531. Qin Miao's first year. Following this, the entire Kanglan continent was immersed in an uproar like never before. As for Qin Nan, he did not attend the celebration feast or the disbanding of the Anti-Heaven Alliance. He went to the Lost Herb Garden instead. Every faction was present in the battle. The Lost Herb Garden was the only one that did not take part. Are you serious about marrying the princess? In a palace, the martial gods of the Lost Herb Garden had gathered. Martial god Tangmu, who was leading the group, was silent at the beginning. However, his expression finally changed after hearing Qin Nan's words. That's right. The princess's parents are no longer in this world. Seniors, please bear witness to this. Qin Nan wore a stern look. From the moment the princess disappeared, he understood his own feelings. He was also aware of the relationship between him and Jiang Bailan. Even though it was normal for an expert to have a few wives and concubines in the Kanglan continent, he only wanted to marry the princess, only one of them. As for the witness, we won't do it. After some time, martial god Tangmu said slowly, if what you said is true, you should come again when the princess is reborn. After all, the two of you will have to work together. Saying this, he let out a sigh in his heart. It was impossible to say that he did not hold a grudge against Qin Nan. However, he came to a realization after seeing Qin Nan's decision. If none of this had happened, Qin Nan would still be someone that the princess could entrust her life to. However, fate was always playing tricks on people. Seniors, thank you. Qin Nan remained silent for some time. He bowed to the martial gods 3 times before he spoke in a firm tone, I'll make sure the princess is reborn. Following this, Qin Nan left the palace, but he did not leave the Lost Herb Garden. He went to the princess palace and the pagoda where she was cultivating in seclusion. He learned everything that had happened to her since she was young. These things often made him smile. When the princess was young, she was already so cute. Princess, come with me to the 9 heavens. You don't have to worry about them. I will turn this place into a forbidden land that no one can violate. Qin Nan began to construct several invisible formations. He even asked Empress Feiyue, the martial serendipity pavilion, and the rest of the authorities to leave some successions in the formations. The entire Kanglan continent began to change during this period. The ancient secrets of the past and the legendary stories were spread to every corner without any restrictions. The history books began to be compiled again. In addition to that, after the South Heaven sacred ground was destroyed, the Battle Tribe, Heavenly Fortune Tribe, 9 Words Ancient Sea, and other tribes took over their territories. The Dragon Emperor did not choose to ascend. After Small Worm retrieved his body, he rebuilt the monster god Forbidden Ground. Sima Kong and Longhu had hooked up with each other. They took turns to visit the factions and loot their possessions. Empress Feiyue did not leave either. She seemed to have a special relationship with the Kanglan continent. She used a shocking method to restrain the primordial rules of the heavens and earth. It was to prevent things like the monarch ranking and god ranking from happening again. Meanwhile, after the authorities of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion disbanded the Anti-Heaven Alliance, they spread the news of the cultivators that had died in the battle across the Kanglan continent. Every city and faction initially only built statues of Qin Nan, but they soon built statues of Empress Feiyue and the cultivators that had died. The second continent was turned into a sacred hall. Everyone's statues and everything that had happened were stored inside. However, something unexpected happened during this period. The authorities of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion did not spread the news about what had happened to Qin Nan. They even ordered the authorities not to tell anyone about it. However, someone eventually spread the news. Even though the Kanglan continent did not purposely add fuel to the fire, the news about Qin Nan still spread to every corner like a storm. In the end, the whole world knew about it. Many fell silent after learning the news. They never thought that Qin Nan had already lost a confidant when he achieved the martial monarch realm. When Qin Nan achieved the martial god realm, he even lost Princess Miao Miao. The man who was considered the strongest in the Kanglan continent, not only the strongest martial god of all times, did not feel any joy from being undefeatable. Instead, he was suffering from great pain. It was hard to tell how long it would take for him to recover from the pain. Qin Nan has opened a new era. We all owe him a favor, and there's nothing we can do to repay him. Why don't we call it the first day of the first year of Qin Nan's reign? An ancient existence said. No matter how strong a cultivator was, they would still fall one day. As such, most cultivators would either strengthen their factions, teach their disciples, or leave their names in history. They were trying to leave something behind in the heavens and earth. The Kanglan continent had never had a name for the year. It was obviously meaningful to use the surname Qin as the beginning and Miao as the last. Even if Qin Nan's achievements would eventually be buried in the river of history, the name of the year would still exist. It would not be replaced so easily. Today is the first day of the first year of Qin Miao's reign. To everyone's surprise, the words were spread to every corner of the Kanglan continent. Countless cultivators had a new definition of the day. However, someone soon mentioned Jiang Bailan. It was impossible to name the year with a single word in her name. They had to find another way. Someone suggested that the 14th day of the second lunar month would be the Nanlan festival. On this day, no faction was allowed to kill one another. Any cultivator who married would be blessed no matter where they were. However, some people did not agree with it. They decided to name it the 7th day of the 7th lunar month. Many years later, it was finally named the 29th day of the 7th lunar month. That being said, it was all in the future. It's time for me to go back. Qin Nan stepped into the rift. He had yet to visit his father after he achieved the martial god realm. As soon as he entered the seven luminaries' flying sword, he received a message that attracted his attention. Meanwhile, it attracted the attention of many experts too. The reason being that since the first year of Qin Miao's reign, it was the first time someone had ascended in the southernmost land. The person was one of the top authorities, the Martial Serendipity Pavilion. Qin Nan, we'll meet again in the 9 heavens. The Martial Serendipity Pavilion successfully overcame the tribulation and disappeared from the Kanglan continent. Chapter 1532. Qin Nan was not in a rush to enter the 9 heavens. He chose to accompany Qin Tian instead. A day in the 9 heavens was equivalent to a month in the Kanglan continent. If he were to leave, even though it would not be a permanent separation, it would greatly decrease the chances of him coming back. Qin Nan, I've settled everything in the Kanglan continent. Empress Feiyue's voice suddenly echoed in his mind. An illusory red string appeared on his wrist, flickering with a faint light. For some reason, the red string that represented present life did not disappear from his hand after the tribulation of 3 lifetimes came to an end. If you're in any danger, you can tell me through the red string. I can help you once. Empress Feiyue's voice was cold, yet it contained a shocking imperiousness. Her cultivation was not restricted in the 9 heavens immortal realm. Sure. Qin Nan did not reject the offer. Even though the tribulation of 3 lifetimes had come to an end, he felt like he was friends with the Empress after the battle. According to the records, our Kanglan continent belongs to the secondary lower realm. There are many other continents and realms in the secondary lower realm. Since you're free, why don't you bring me there? Qin Tian said to Qin Nan as a thought crossed his mind. Qin Nan did not reject the offer. He silently left the Kanglan continent. The father and son went to the Huiyuan continent, the Lingxiao continent, and many other places. They witnessed a lot of fascinating sceneries. During this period, the authorities that were familiar with Qin Nan bid farewell to him and headed for the 9 heavens. Qin Nan also transmitted his thoughts to Gong Yang, Tang Qinshan, Sima Kong, and the others. Gong Yang was not interested in the 9 heavens. He was planning to take over the 9 words ancient sea. Sima Kong and Long Hu shook their heads when they mentioned the 9 heavens. The former only wanted to become the god of thieves, not the immortal of thieves. To put it more directly, if these two went to the 9 heavens, they might die one day. If that was the case, they might as well stay in the secondary lower realm and live a carefree life. As for Tang Qinshan, he had already gone into seclusion to break through to the martial god realm. He was all alone in this world with only a black saber as his companion. He wanted to bring this saber with him to see this wonderful world. There were also many familiar faces, such as the 2 hounds, Skeleton Xiaohong, Xianyu, Aot Sangtian, and many others. They had all made their own choices. Qin Nan didn't say much. Although he was a little reluctant, everyone had their own life. As long as he could live his life to the fullest, that was enough. Moreover, even if there came a day when they were separated by endless time and space, their friendship would never be erased, existing forever. One thing worth mentioning was the inner disciple of the Lu clan, Lu Tianji, who had faked his death to get through the god horoscope contest. After the battlefield was destroyed, he sensed everything. While trembling with fear, he concealed his identity and began to cultivate again, preparing to ascend to the 9 heavens again. I'll have to prepare a place for the crystal. Qin Nan withdrew his thoughts. The crystal had a certain size, thus it was impossible to bring it around with him. It would not work if he kept it in his storage bag, as it lacked qi. He could only open up a space for himself. Qin Nan was startled. As the thought crossed his mind, the mysterious ownerless heaven pattern in his divine sense emitted wisps of mystical light. Could it be? Qin Nan inserted his god force into the pattern. Buzz. In an instant, a vast amount of power reached out like an invisible hand and grabbed the crystal into the depths of the catalogue. There was a small world inside the ownerless heaven pattern. On top of that, Qin Nan clearly noticed that both Jiang Bailan and the Princess Auras were nourished by a great force when the crystal was placed inside the pattern. It seems like I'll have to learn more about the ownerless heaven pattern if I have the chance, Qin Nan murmured. If the beast hide drawing took the initiative to ask about it, the pattern must be unbelievably powerful. Time gradually passed. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter were gone. The martial path of the Kanglan continent shone brightly like never before. Many experts and authorities were born. Qin Nan and Qin Tian's footprints were spread across half of the secondary lower realm. Kid, are you planning to stay with me forever? Until the day I die. Suddenly, Qin Tian's expression turned solemn. Father. Qin Nan wanted to say something, but Qin Tian interrupted him and knocked him on the head. I believe you know that everyone has their own life. Even though I'm your father, our lives are completely different. Qin Tian snapped. I've been traveling to different continents with you over the years, but I've only taken a brief look at them. I haven't had the chance to learn more about them. I've decided to take a good look. Kid, you should go and conquer the 9 heavens. Hearing the last sentence, Qin Nan's battle blood began to flow again. However, he did not say anything. Many days later, he finally dropped to his knees in front of Qin Tian. Thud thud thud. He brought his fists together after 3 kowtows. Father, take care. Under Qin Tian's relieved gaze, Qin Nan, whose spine was strong enough to support the sky, left decisively. He returned to the Kanglan continent and prepared to ascend to the heavens. As Qin Tian said, he was going to conquer the 9 heavens. There were countless cultivators in the world. He was extremely lucky to have the divine battle spirit, the divine battle flesh, and the divine god of battle to acknowledge him as his master. As such, he was determined to embark on a path that ordinary people could only look up to. Just like in the Kanglan continent, when everyone thought the top 1 martial monarch of all times was just a legend, he had done it and even surpassed the level of the top 1 martial god of all times. It was the same when he went to the 9 heavens. He was going to defeat countless geniuses, achieve the martial god realm, resurrect the princess, defeat countless peerless rulers, and become unstoppable. Perhaps his current idea was a little too grand and a little too dreamy, but he was still young, his battle blood had yet to run cold. Everything could be tried and everything could be fought for. Otherwise, it would be too regrettable. 9 Heaven's immortal realm, I, Qin Nan, am here. Qin Nan stood on the Kanglan continent. He lifted his gaze and fully unleashed his god force. Thunderclouds appeared in the sky within the blink of an eye. Unlike the monarch tribulation and the god tribulation, the thunderclouds would not grow stronger depending on the cultivator's cultivation. It was like a huge door. Once it was broken, the cultivator would be able to enter the 9 heavens. Bang! Chapter 1533. Skystride Dao Stairs. Chapter 1541. Ascending the stairs. Skystride Dao Stairs. Following it, the scenery before Qin Nan changed completely. In front of him and his surroundings were no longer a boundless rift, but a chaotic mess. At the end of the chaos, a greenish-white Dao light shone. Qin Nan flew into the glow and saw several ancient stairs with the color of white jade covered in Dao runes. So this is the Skystride Dao Stairs? Qin Nan's eyes flickered with astonishment. He stepped onto the stairs and walked up one step at a time. Every time he walked up a flight of stairs, a formless and pure energy would be born and enter his body, bringing him great benefits. Not only that, but on his forehead, a greenish-white rune slowly condensed and then disappeared. Every person that ascended would stumble into the Skystride Dao Stairs. The stairs were the only way to reach the 9 Heavens' immortal realm within a short period of time. On top of that, those that ascended the stairs would receive great benefit. Normally, cultivators would achieve the human god realm after ascending the stairs. On top of that, the blue-white rune was the most important thing. The rune was called the Ascension Dao rune. Only the cultivators of the secondary lower realm had it. Once they ascended to the primary upper realm, they could use the rune to return to the secondary lower realm. Even though it would not summon the Skystride Dao Stairs again, it would make the journey a lot easier. In comparison, it was a lot more difficult for the cultivators of the primary upper realm to return to the secondary lower realm. They would have to travel across the boundless rift and face great dangers. Heaven God Lu had already gone through a lot just to come to the Kanglan continent. He was extremely lucky too. He would have died if he was in the slightest bit of danger. After all, the strength of the primary upper realm was a lot stronger than the secondary lower realm. If it was so easy to come to the primary upper realm, the secondary lower realm would have long ceased to exist. My cultivation has reached the second layer Earth God realm after merging with the flesh of the divine God of battle. The force is extremely pure. I should be able to stabilize it now. Qin Nan murmured. He activated the immortal root and calmed his thoughts. Time gradually passed. 3 days were gone fairly quickly. The god glow engulfing Qin Nan had turned into the color of a crystal. The god force in his body had turned into a crystal clear water. This was the true Earth God realm. His control and use of divine power had reached a whole new level. When Qin Nan's cultivation reached the Heaven God realm, his divine energy would completely transform and meet the conditions to transform into immortal energy. Qin Nan's eyes sprang open all of a sudden as he frowned. At that instant, he felt a shocking sense of danger from the Skystride Dao Stairs. Roar! As if to prove his speculation, countless invisible forces gathered from all directions and turned into ferocious-looking giant beasts. Each of the beasts possessed a formidable cultivation. They had all reached the 10th layer human god realm. 2 or 3 of them had even achieved the Earth God realm. Why are there such ferocious beasts here? Qin Nan's eyes flickered with golden light as he instantly attacked, unleashing countless saber chi. At the same time, the frown on his face deepened. From what he knew, There was no danger on the Skystride Dao stairs. Qin Nan, you don't have to kill them. Just trap them. The beast hide drawing suddenly appeared. The young man inside it said, "It's a test from the ancient taboo." The ancient taboo? Qin Nan was startled. You will learn about the ancient taboo once you ascend as an immortal in the 9 heavens. The young man said calmly, You aren't the only one. The others who have ascended are being attacked by the beasts too. The young man flicked his finger and summoned several images. In each of the images, a cultivator was slaying the beasts on the Skystride Dao stairs. However, their cultivations were no match for the beasts. They were killed in no time. What a big deal. Qin Nan squinted. The saber chi that he unleashed immediately transformed into cages trapping the beasts. As for Qin Nan, he was not too surprised. He was curious about the ancient taboo, but he could more or less guess that it had something to do with the divine god of battle. The 5th immortal was able to destroy an entire world just by mentioning his name. The divine god of battle's identity must be a lot scarier than he had imagined. It was reasonable that he had attracted so many enemies. I won't show myself before you ascend as an immortal. You will have to make the decision yourself. The young man in the beast hide drawing said calmly. Qin Nan was startled. He brought his fists together and said, Thanks. Even though the divine god of battle was wary of the beast hide drawing, he had never mentioned that the beast hide drawing was his enemy. Up until now, the painting had helped him resolve some of the dangers he faced. When the beast hide drawing disappeared, Qin Nan pondered for a moment before continuing to climb the Skystride Dao stairs. Time gradually passed. 3 days were gone fairly quickly. Finally, I've arrived at the primary upper realm. Qin Nan came to a stop. His eyes flickered as he stared at the Skystride Dao stairs that had disappeared in front of him. It was replaced by an ancient formation that was around 97 zhang tall and emitted an intimidating glow. Even the battle blood in his body began to boil. This time, unlike when his soul entered the 9 heavens, he had actually arrived at the 9 heavens immortal realm. He was currently in the earth god realm. Whoosh! Qin Nan withdrew his thoughts and turned into a ray of light entering the formation. In an instant, a feeling of time and space changing rose in his heart. It was as if he had stepped into a space-time tunnel at this moment and was undergoing some kind of shuttling. Bang! At that instant, a magnificent aura burst into the sky. The divine battle spirit that had been dormant for a long time floated out from his back. Similar to last time, even though Qin Nan had achieved the earth god realm, he was still unable to summon its illusionary figure. He could only unleash a blue glow. Wisps of the force of the divine god of battle were produced and merged with the god force in his body. It began to evolve. It was impossible for the real divine battle spirit to appear in the Kanglan continent. In other words, only those in the primary upper realm could summon the divine battle spirit and absorb the force of the divine god of battle. Thud! Before Qin Nan could immerse himself in the process, he felt his body colliding with a huge mountain, resulting in a shocking crash. Following this, he found himself in a brand new world. Countless powerful divine thoughts landed on him from all directions. Chapter 1534. The Ascension Dojo. Qin Nan soon came to a stop. He quickly scanned his surroundings with his divine sense. He found himself on an ancient dojo over 10,000 zhang long, emitting wisps of golden light. The aura of the dojo was quite strange, as if it did not belong to this world. No powerful force could destroy it. The dojo was the Ascension Dojo, formed by the great Tao of the heavens and earth. It was scattered across the various worlds in the 9 heavens immortal realm. There were a few hundred of them, specifically used to welcome the cultivators who were ascending from the secondary lower realm. In addition to it, there were a few hundred figures not far from the dojo. Most of them were in the martial god realm, Emperor Wu, and the martial ancestor. Only a few dozen of them were in the sixth-layer human god realm. Qin Nan was not surprised at all. He immediately came to a realization. Whenever a cultivator was about to ascend from the secondary lower realm, the Ascension Dojo would produce rare phenomena. The more rare phenomena there were, the more cultivators there would be. Besides, those who were able to ascend from the secondary lower realm to the primary upper realm were all people with great determination and luck. As such, the factions of these small worlds would often send people to recruit them. They would be friendly in every aspect. After all, these factions were not like the formidable factions in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. Their patriarchs and patriarchs were only in the earth god realm. What's going on here? Judging from the rare phenomena, there should be at least 23 cultivators ascending. Why is there only one now? The human god realm experts were stunned when they saw Qin Nan on his own. Young cultivator, did anything happen during your ascension? An old blue-haired man asked in a friendly tone. They had purposely come from other small worlds as there were a lot of cultivators ascending this time. They were eager to know what was going on after witnessing the outcome. Senior, nothing happened during my ascension. Qin Nan brought his fists together and said. He would not tell anyone that the ancient taboo had used some law-defying method to kill the cultivators who were ascending on the Skystride Dao stairs. The human god realm experts frowned at the same time. Of course, they didn't believe Qin Nan's words at all. However, since the other party had already said so, they couldn't ask any further. Just as they were about to recruit Qin Nan, a short-haired middle-aged man in a cloud robe with a few scars between his eyebrows sneered. Brat, who do you think we are? Don't try to fool us. Don't be so shameless. What happened in between? Tell me everything clearly. This time, he was sent here to recruit ascenders. The sect master had given him a strict order to summon at least 5 people. If he failed to do so, he would be severely punished. The icy aura lingering in the air caused the other disciples to feel a chill in their hearts, not daring to utter a single word. Bastard, I don't care where you run to, I'm going to take your head. A loud roar exploded deep inside the rift. The patriarch of the Luotian clan was startled by the death of a 6th-layer human god realm elder. Fellow Taoist, you're in big trouble now. Why don't you join our Lingshu sect? Not only will we give you the position of an elder, we will also guarantee your safety. Cultivator, don't go to the Lingshu sect. Come to our Yuchuan sect. Our Yuchuan sect's patriarch is a peak earth god realm expert and cultivator. We, the rest of the human god realm experts, were overjoyed instead of being shocked. They immediately invited Qin Nan to join their sect. The man's cultivation was at least in the 8th-layer or 9th-layer human god realm. With enough resources, he could easily become a heaven god realm expert. As a matter of fact, he could even ascend as an immortal in the 9 Heavens immortal realm. Now that the man was being threatened by the Luotian clan, it was a great opportunity for them to recruit him. That won't be necessary. Qin Nan initially wanted to join a faction to learn more about the 9 Heavens, but he rejected the offer as he was not fond of them. He glanced at a disciple of the Luotian clan and asked coldly, "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."